Welcome back, detectives. Let's dive into another horrible case. The case of Aya Hachem. The Hachem family moved to the UK from Lebanon in November 2011, seeking a safer and more promising future. Aya's father, Ismael, wanted his children to have a good education and become valuable member of society. He applied for asylum for himself and his family, and after receiving a residence permit, they settled in Blackburn. Aya was a driven and ambitious young woman with big plans for her life. She was a law student at Salford University. Tragically, her parents' hopes for a better life were shattered when Aya was killed in a senseless act of violence. On May 17, 2020, Aya left her house to go to a nearby supermarket at around 3 p.m. However, she never returned home. About an hour later, Aya's father went out to look for her. Aya's mother searched online and discovered the news that a woman had been shot in their neighborhood. Soon after, Aya's parents received the devastating news that their daughter had been killed in the shooting. Aya was walking on King Street when a car drove by with multiple occupants. One of the individuals in the car fired 2 shots, one of which fatally hit Aya. 19-year-old Aya Hachem was fatally shot on King Street and died the same day despite medical efforts. The police do not think the incident was motivated by racism or religious hatred. Deputy Chief Terry Woods is seeking the public's help in gathering evidence. He asks anyone with dashcam footage or surveillance cameras to come forward if they have recordings of a green Toyota Avensis car or any suspicious activity. According to Deputy Chief Woods, Aya was an innocent bystander who was shopping for her family when she was accidentally caught in the crossfire. The shooting involved a green Toyota Avensis car. Witnesses report that 2 rounds were fired from the vehicle, and sadly, Aya was hit. Later that day, police discovered the Toyota Avensis car involved in the shooting abandoned near the scene of the crime. They also obtained CCTV footage of the incident. The footage shows that at 3:03 p.m. Aya is walking along the sidewalk. The Toyota mentioned earlier drives past her. The rear side window on the left is down. The shooter makes a fatal shot. The bullet goes through her and hits the pole. For ethical reasons, the police did not reveal footage of she falling to the ground. After reviewing the video recording, it's clear that there were at least 2 individuals in the car, the driver and the shooter. Following the shooting, the perpetrators quickly fled the scene and abandoned the vehicle on a nearby street. Within 2 hours, the police located the car and initiated a search for its owner. Aya Hachem was caught in the crossfire of a shooting incident that occurred near Khan's car wash. Following her death, the police launched a massive operation to apprehend the suspects, who had fled the UK, with the assistance of international law enforcement. 8 individuals were initially charged in connection with her death. Aya's death was ultimately determined to be a tragic accident. She was an innocent bystander. The shooting was actually a targeted attack on the owner of Khan's car wash, who was a competitor of Pharaoh Suleiman. It was Suleiman who allegedly hired a hitman to take out Khan, but the bullet mistakenly hit Aya instead. According to the video recording, at the time of the incident, Aya was standing a few feet away from a pole. The first bullet fired missed its intended target and hit something near a man, as evidenced by the splashing water. The key point here is that the shooter made a mistake. The person they aimed at was not the business owner, but rather an employee who was mistaken for Khan. During the second shot, Aya was positioned between the shooter and the employee. The bullet struck her in the left side of her chest, passed through her body, and then hit the pole. The car immediately fled the scene. The car wash owner, Khan, witnessed Aya falling to the ground and rushed to her aid, calling emergency services in the process. He described the events, stating that he had seen the car and the gun, and then the assailant sped away. According to him, they returned and started shooting, aiming the gun at him, which left him confused. To better understand the crime, let's examine the roles of the individuals involved. We'll start with the mastermind, Pharaoh Suleiman. Pharaoh Suleiman was a successful businessman with a loving family. Suleiman owned a thriving tires shop that had gained significant popularity over time. The business provided him with a substantial income, enabling him and his family to live a comfortable life. He was also active on social media, frequently sharing photos of himself driving expensive cars, giving his followers a glimpse into his life. When his business began to decline, he devised a plan to eliminate his competitor, Khan. Despite being a potential suspect due to his motive, Suleiman went ahead with the plan. He enlisted the help of Ayaz Hussein, Zamir Raja, and Anthony Ennis. The perpetrators conducted a surveillance mission the day before the crime, driving near the car wash to inspect the area. Additionally, Abu Bakr Saisha purchased the Toyota used in the crime with money provided by Suleiman. Kashif Manzoor ensured the car was in working condition by performing technical checks and addressing any malfunctions. Uthman Saisha and his girlfriend, Judy Chapman, played a supporting role in the crime. They drove the shooter and driver to the location of the Toyota in their Ford Fiesta and then picked them up after the crime was committed, they abandoning the Toyota on a nearby street. According to the inquest, at 1:14 p.m., Judy Chapman and Uthman Saisha picked up Raja and Ennis from Bolton and drove them 13 miles to Blackburn, where the Toyota was parked. Kashif Manzoor made sure the Toyota was ready as all four men drove to Blackburn. However, when they stopped a couple of miles from the car wash, the Toyota wouldn't start due to a dead battery. Manzoor jumped the battery using another car's battery and some wires. With the car started, Manzoor handed it over to Raja and Ennis, then returned to the service station where Suleiman was waiting, watching from a front row seat to see what would happen. The Toyota approached the corner with its windows rolled down. Ennis and Raja circled the block several times, waiting for the perfect moment to act. They needed to be on the same side of the street as Khan's car wash. Meanwhile, Manzoor and Suleiman were observing the situation unfold. On the fourth pass by the car wash, the Toyota slowed down. Coincidentally, Khan was on the street at that exact moment. However, the shooter, Zamir Raja, made a mistake and fired the first shot at a different employee, not Khan. Fortunately, the first bullet missed its target. But the second bullet hit Aya. Following the shooting, Raja and Ennis fled the scene, abandoning their vehicle and getting into a car with Judy Chapman and Uthman Saisha, who drove them away from Blackburn. When police reviewed the video of Suleiman's store, Ayaz Hussein entered the store. Suleiman signaled to the others who were aware of the incident to leave the room and go to the second floor. Abu Bakr Saisha, who had bought the Toyota involved in the crime, was sitting behind them. When Abu Bakr Saisha overheard the police radio mention that the perpetrator's car had been found, he immediately got up to discuss something with Suleiman. 9 days after Aya's murder, Zamir Raja, the shooter, fled to Portugal and met Anthony Ennis, the driver of the Toyota, at Lisbon airport. Both men had escaped the country. Meanwhile, the police were arresting the individuals involved in the crime. Pharaoh Suleiman, the mastermind, was arrested on May 18, the day after Aya's murder. Abu Bakr Saisha was arrested on May 19, and Judy Chapman and Uthman Saisha were arrested on May 20. Ayaz Hussein and Kashif Manzoor were arrested on May 21. Zamir Raja, who had hoped to return to England without being detected, was arrested at a London train station on June 6. Anthony Ennis was caught in Spain on July 4 and extradited to the UK. Aya Hachem was murdered and Khan, the owner of a car wash, was nearly killed in a violent crime. Several suspects were charged, and at first, all of them denied any involvement. However, as the investigation continued and the pressure mounted, their stories began to contradict each other as they tried to downplay their roles in the crime. As the suspects' testimonies became more inconsistent, they started to turn on each other, revealing crucial details about the crime to the police. Each suspect tried to avoid a long prison sentence by blaming the others. On August 5, 2021, the court delivered its verdicts, resulting in severe sentences for all those involved. Pharaoh Solon, who had a prior conviction for a fatal hit-and-run incident in 2001, received a life sentence with a minimum term of 34 years. Raja, the shooter, was also given a life sentence with a minimum term of 34 years. According to reports, he was paid $500 for his involvement in the crime. The driver, Anthony Ennis, was sentenced to life imprisonment with a minimum term of 33 years. Ayaz Hussein, who orchestrated the crime, received a life sentence with a minimum term of 32 years. Abu Bakr Saisha, who bought the getaway car, will serve at least 28 years. Uthman Satatya, who arranged for the shooter and driver to be transported, will also serve at least 28 years, and Kashif Manzoor, who made sure the car was working on the day of the crime, will serve at least 27 years. The judge was critical of the defendants, stating that they showed no regret for their actions after the shooting. Instead of taking responsibility, they tried to deceive and manipulate their way out of trouble. When that failed, they turned on each other in an attempt to save themselves. Judy Chapman was found guilty in October 2021 of involuntary deprivation of life. She was given a 15-year prison sentence for driving the car involved in the crime. However, investigators have since discovered that other individuals were involved in the crime. This was revealed through analysis of communication between the convicted parties. Louis Otway, a 42-year-old from Manchester, was sentenced to life in prison on May 5, 2023, with a minimum term of 32 years. During his trial, evidence revealed that Otway acted as an intermediary between Ayaz Hussein, Zamir Raja, and Anthony Ennis. Specifically, he assisted Hussein in committing a crime. Another person, Banbridge, was also involved in the case. She was the 10th person to be found guilty. Prosecutors said that Banbridge met with Raja and Ennis in Bolton, took their phones, and turned them off. Then, she drove to Trafford and turned the phones back on in different locations, making it seem like Raja and Ennis were in Greater Manchester, not Blackburn, when a shooting happened. This was done to create a fake alibi for the two men. Banbridge, 32, admitted to conspiracy to pervert the course of justice and was sentenced to 23 months in prison on August 11, 2023. This was the last conviction in the case of Ayah Hachem. Hello friends, welcome to our channel. Today we're going to take a look at another horrible case with you, the case of Valerie Tiemann. Valerie Tiemann was born on December 31, 1981, in Salem, Virginia. Valerie Joy Harmon was the child of Sarah Jean Sampson Harmon and Jean Allen Harmon. She grew up in Greenville, South Carolina, and graduated from Hampton Park Christian School in 2000. Valerie then earned her cosmetology degree from Bob Jones University. Known for her warm, friendly smile and outgoing personality, Valerie was passionate about drama and speech. She enjoyed music, playing the piano and flute. Using her cosmetology skills, Valerie worked in salons, spas, and pageants, helping others look and feel their best. Valerie met Matt through a mutual friend when she was 22. Despite their contrasting personalities, Valerie was outgoing and cheerful, while Matt was more withdrawn. They made it work. The couple got married in 2004 and initially lived harmoniously in Matt's small house after their honeymoon. However, Valerie's parents soon noticed changes in her behavior. Matt tightly controlled their finances, forcing Valerie to open a separate bank account to save personally. As time passed, Matt's behavior worsened as he sought to control every aspect of Valerie's life and blamed her for all their problems. Valerie endured much emotional pain, but eventually reached her breaking point. After 10 years, she divorced Matt, seeking a fresh start. Luke Tiemann brought a fresh start to Valerie's life, helping her put her past problems behind her. With his 10-year Army background, including service in Iraq and Afghanistan, Valerie saw him as a reliable and loving partner. Her relatives noticed a significant change in her, as she became cheerful and smiling once again, just like 10 years prior. The couple got married on June 6, 2014, and began living at Luke's parents' house in Fairfield, Maine, while Valerie's parents resided in South Carolina. After visiting her family in South Carolina, Luke and Valerie returned to Maine in August 2016. On August 24, 2016, Valerie's mother, Sarah Jean Harmon, had her last conversation with her daughter through text messages. Around that time, Luke had started chatting with a woman on Facebook and was seen with her by several people. On the night of August 24th, Luke and the woman were intimate, and it appears that Valerie discovered their infidelity that night. On August 25, 2016, Valerie called Luke 31 times within a 5-hour span. A mutual friend of the couple contacted Valerie via Messenger, informing her that Luke was involved with other women and claiming they were separated. Valerie responded with several messages, expressing her heartbreak and conveying that God had a plan, and that Luke would never find a better woman than her, and that he had lost her. On August 26, 2016, Luke Tiemann moved in with the woman he was having an affair with, claiming to her that his wife Valerie had left him for another man. Meanwhile, Valerie's parents, Sarah Jean and Alan Harmon, were growing concerned because Valerie, who had been calling them every week, had suddenly stopped responding to their calls and texts. After a week of trying to reach her, they decided to contact Luke, asking how he and Valerie were doing. The next day, Luke replied, saying they were fine and that he loved her very much. However, another 13 days went by with no word from Valerie, prompting her parents to reach out to Luke's father for help. To their shock, Luke's father told them that Valerie had been missing for about 2 weeks and that they had not seen her. He even asked what to do with her belongings. When Alan confronted Luke about why he hadn't told them about Valerie's disappearance, Luke claimed he was waiting for Valerie to contact her parents herself, as he didn't want to speak poorly of her. He repeated the story that Valerie had left him for another man, but her parents knew it was untrue. It was out of character for Valerie, and they were certain she would have reached out to them because she knew they would worry. On September 9, 2016, Alan filed a report with the Fairfield Police Department stating Valerie was missing. The detectives launched an investigation, which began with a visit to Luke Tiemann's parents, where Valerie had been living with her husband. During the visit, they spoke with Luke's mother, Laurel Tiemann, but she claimed to have no knowledge of their whereabouts. As a result, the detectives left without gaining any new information. Valerie's parents had always thought it was difficult for their daughter to live with Laurel, who they saw as overbearing. 2 weeks after Valerie's disappearance, Laurel packed all of her belongings into garbage bags. This action clearly reflected Laurel's attitude towards her daughter-in-law. She seemed unconcerned about Valerie's well-being and was primarily motivated by a desire to clear the house of her belongings. The police were searching for Luke Tiemann to ask him some questions, but he was nowhere to be found. They went to his home, but he wasn't there. And his parents claimed they didn't know his whereabouts. However, 5 days after Valerie's disappearance, Luke unexpectedly contacted the police himself, stating that he was aware they wanted to speak with him. During the conversation, the detectives asked him about Valerie and the last time he saw her. Luke's response was peculiar. He explained that, about 2 weeks prior, he and Valerie had stopped by the local Walmart to purchase some groceries. While he went inside the store, Valerie stayed in the car. When he finished shopping and returned to the vehicle, Valerie was gone. Luke claimed that he tried to reach her by calling and texting, offering to take her back. He also revealed that his marriage to Valerie was on the verge of collapse. According to him, Valerie had mentioned another man during a conversation, leading him to believe she was having an affair. Despite this, Luke didn't know the man's identity or address, and he assumed Valerie had left him for this unknown individual. Valerie's family, however, insisted she had never mentioned anyone else besides Luke Tiemann in her life. The police made a public appeal through the media, releasing a photo of Valerie and asking anyone who had seen her in the recent weeks to come forward with information for the detectives. The circumstances surrounding her disappearance from the Walmart parking lot, including her belongings being found in garbage bags, seemed suspicious. It was also unclear why Luke Tiemann, Valerie's husband, had made no effort to search for her, possibly due to being preoccupied with another woman. Investigators visited the Walmart where Luke and Valerie had been on the day of her disappearance, where they reviewed the surveillance footage. Despite searching for over an hour, they found no evidence of Luke, his red pickup truck, or Valerie on any of the recordings. This discovery revealed that Luke had lied to the police and that he was hiding something. The investigators decided to interview Luke in person, but they didn't disclose all the information they had obtained. They suspected that he might contradict himself or alter his story if he knew what they knew. Luke's open affair with Billie Joe Goodman didn't go unnoticed by anyone. While he admitted to cheating on Valerie, he claimed it was an attempt to heal from their recent breakup. Billie Joe, however, had a string of failed relationships behind her, but when she met Luke, she believed he was the one with whom she could build a stable future. This new development led investigators to a crucial question. Did Valerie pose a threat to Luke and Billie Joe's budding relationship? Was it possible that the couple wanted to start anew, and Valerie's presence was an obstacle they decided to eliminate to ensure their plans went undisrupted? The police interviewed Billie Joe, who claimed she thought Luke had divorced his wife. When questioned, she denied any knowledge of Valerie Tiemann's disappearance. Meanwhile, a local informant tipped off the police about a driver's license found in a parking lot near Billie Joe's home, and it belonged to Valerie. This discovery raised suspicions, as it seemed unlikely that Valerie would abandon her belongings and identification to run off with someone else. On September 19, 2016, Luke Tiemann gave an interview to News Center, Maine, 10 days after Valerie's father, Alan, had filed a missing persons report with the police. During the interview, Luke told reporters that he and Valerie had gone to Walmart, but Valerie was not in the car when he returned. At the time, he was unaware that the Walmart CCTV footage did not corroborate his account. Police dogs trained to detect human remains were brought in to search the last known place where Valerie lived. The search plan involved checking the house, the land, and the stream. After about 5 minutes, a police dog picked up a scent in the woods behind the Tiemann family house. An officer began digging the soil with his hands and found a shoe sticking out of the ground. Other officers, wearing gloves, joined in to help dig. They eventually uncovered a woman's body, wrapped in a blanket and buried with a collection of unusual items. These items included a bag of potato chips, a bottle of Gucci perfume, a package of sweet tarts, a flannel shirt, a mason jar, a handwritten note, and a wedding ring. The ring was discovered later when evidence was being prepared for trial. Sergeant Scott Bryant, chief of Maine's evidence response team, was processing the contents of the mason jar, which included dirt, flower stems, and twigs, when he heard a thud and found the ring. Although it was not specified who the ring belonged to or whether it was a man's or woman's, Bryant noted that the ring was much larger than his own wedding ring. The body was transported to the forensic medical examiner's office for an autopsy and identification. Unfortunately, Sarah Jean and Alan Harmon received the devastating news that every parent fears the most. The body discovered behind the Tiemann family house was identified as their daughter, Valerie. Valerie lived in the house with Luke, as well as his parents and younger brother Sam. The detectives searched the barn and found landscaping tools that belonged to Sam, which were used to dig the burial site where Valerie's body was found. They also discovered a device related to illegal substance use. Further investigation revealed that Sam Tiemann had a history of using illegal substances, which Valerie had confided in her parents about during her visit to South Carolina. The police had to investigate whether Sam Tiemann was involved in Valerie's death. During a search of Luke's parents' bedroom, investigators discovered a .45 caliber handgun that Luke Tiemann had purchased in 2015. Despite this, Luke's parents claimed to have had no knowledge of Valerie's burial near their house, which seems unlikely. Around the time Valerie's body was found, investigators also discovered Luke with his new girlfriend, Billie Joe. Luke Tiemann was arrested and taken in for questioning. He told investigators that Valerie had died from an overdose on August 25th, about a month prior, due to her use of illegal substances. According to Luke, he didn't inform Valerie's parents about her death because he wanted to spare them the knowledge of her drug use. Instead of calling 911, he left her body in bed until evening, then wrapped her in a blanket, added a note, and buried her in the woods behind the house with the help of his brother Sam. According to Luke, Valerie did not have any physical injuries before she died. However, the autopsy results revealed that Luke was not telling the truth. Although Valerie's blood showed no traces of banned substances, it did contain prescription drugs. But that was not the most astonishing finding. Valerie died from 2 gunshot wounds, one to the head and the other to the neck. The ballistics examination indicated that the bullets removed from Valerie's body came from a .45 caliber handgun. Significantly, this handgun matched the one found by investigators in Luke's parents' bedroom during a search. Luke admitted to buying the gun about a year prior, claiming it was for his father. Despite this, he denied knowing that Valerie had been shot. Luke Tiemann, 32, has been charged with the murder of his 34-year-old wife, Valerie Tiemann. Although his parents and younger brother were investigated, no evidence was found to implicate them. Luke claimed that his brother, Sam, helped him bury Valerie's body, but the police found that Sam was not at home at the time, and it remains unclear whether Luke's parents were aware of or involved in Valerie's death. It is noteworthy that they did not report hearing 2 gunshots on April 2, 2018. The trial began in Somerset County Superior Court in Skowhegan, Maine, with opening statements marking the start of a 5-day trial. Luke pleaded not guilty, arguing that he had been framed. He claimed that he would not have left incriminating evidence, such as an engagement ring and a note, near the body. But forensic examinations linked all the items found with Valerie's body to Luke Tiemann. A computer forensics expert testified, revealing that Valerie's phone was last used on August 25, 2016, the day the police believe she died. The detective explained how tracking cell phone usage can help determine an individual's location at the time of a call. Valerie made 31 calls to Luke on the same day he allegedly spent time with his new girlfriend, Billie Joe. Luke only answered the last call, which lasted around 13 minutes. The police believe he was at home when the call ended. The morning after Valerie's disappearance, a woman sent a message to Valerie's phone, accusing Luke of cheating on her. This was the last time the woman was heard from. Luke's defense team questioned the authenticity of these phone records. In court, Luke's younger brother, Sam Tiemann, testified against him. Luke had told the police that Sam helped him bury Valerie's body, but Sam denied any involvement, claiming he was working 2 hours away at the time and had his work log as proof. Sam told the court that he confronted Luke after hearing he had implicated him, and Luke responded by saying, "What else do you do with a dead body?" The police continued to press Luke about who shot Valerie, even suggesting that his brother Sam or their parents might be involved. Luke insisted that they were incapable of such an act. The officers wondered if Luke might have blacked out due to his PTSD, which he had previously claimed would sometimes cause him to become enraged and forgetful afterwards. Several witnesses called by the prosecutor testified in court about the private lives of Luke and Valerie Tiemann. They gave detailed accounts of how the couple frequently used significant amounts of illegal drugs. Additionally, they stated that Luke had informed people he was getting a divorce around the same time Valerie went missing. Luke's former girlfriend, Jackie Spencer, revealed to the jury that she had a close relationship with the couple and had even served as the maid of honor at their wedding. She stated that she had personally witnessed Valerie and Luke using various illegal drugs together. Furthermore, she testified that Luke had begun sending her numerous text messages around the time Valerie vanished, suggesting that he may have been interested in pursuing a romantic relationship with her. The jury was shown evidence from the crime scene, which included a video that depicted the approximately 3-minute walk from where Valerie's body was discovered to the Tiemans' home. The video footage revealed an overgrown, all-terrain vehicle trail winding through a thickly forested area, a common feature found behind many rural homes in Maine. The defense team, representing Luke, raised objections to certain pieces of evidence, including gardening tools found in a shed near the property and a .45 caliber handgun discovered in one of the rooms of the home. They contended that the prosecution had failed to establish ownership of these items, suggesting that someone else in the household may have had access to them. During the trial, Luke Tiemann acknowledged that he had changed his story multiple times, alleging that detectives had coerced him into providing false testimony. He insisted that he had no reason to kill his wife and that there was no DNA evidence connecting him to the crime scene. The prosecutors, however, argued that Tiemann was the only person who could have harmed Valerie, and that all the evidence pointed to his guilt. The jury took less than an hour to deliberate before finding Tiemann guilty. At the sentencing hearing, Valerie's mother expressed her grief and outrage, denouncing Tiemann as an evil-hearted man who still refused to accept responsibility for his actions and demanded a life sentence. In contrast, Tiemann's mother begged the court to consider her son's entire life and to balance justice with compassion. Ultimately, Tiemann received a 55-year prison sentence, which was longer than his family had hoped. Despite later changing his testimony again while incarcerated, this did not have a positive impact on his case. Hello friends, welcome to our channel. Today we're going to take a look at another horrible case with you. The case of Asel Nogoybayeva. The case of one fragile young woman who begged for help from the state and asked for protection. The authorities showed complete indifference. Asel Nogoybayeva was born in 1986 in the city of Tokmok, Ch Oblast, Kyrgyzstan. After finishing school, she finished hairdressing courses and moved to Bishkek to find a job in a salon. It is easy to get lost in a large city, but sometimes it is much easier to meet people there. One day, Azamat Estebasov came to the hairdresser shop where Asel worked to get a new haircut. He liked the pretty, slender girl very much and invited her for a cup of fragrant coffee. The meeting became fateful for both of them. After all, Azamat also liked Asel very much. He seemed to be a simple and attentive man who was raised in a prosperous family and was very hard-working. Asel's family approved of her daughter's choice because Azamat was very religious and honored Muslim traditions. Asel's parents did not see any disadvantages in the groom and wholeheartedly blessed the marriage. At the age of 19, Asel married her beloved Azamat. Soon, the first child, a boy, was born in the young family. It seems that every man dreams of an heir, someone to carry on the family name. But in our story, the joy of fatherhood, like a genie released from a bottle, unleashed Azamats and cruel demons. And so, on an ordinary evening, a simple family story became a true drama, triggering a whole series of tragic events. Asel and Azamat were bathing their son. The inexperienced father accidentally poured too much water on the child. He shook with fright and cried a lot. Asel reacted rudely and shouted at her husband. Azamat did not hesitate to hit her in the face in response. That same evening, Asel and the child went to her mother's house. Azamat repented and asked for forgiveness. He begged and said that this would never happen again. It is worth noting that the Kyrgyz mindset is markedly different from other mindsets. From a young age, girls are instilled with the value of patience. Divorce is generally frowned upon, though not forbidden, and the Muslim faith plays a significant role in creating and preserving families through various means. Knowing the traditions and customs of the Turkic family, Ismael, who grew up without a father, did not want her son to experience a similar fate. She believed that Azamat's violent outburst was a one-time occurrence, and they would be able to continue living harmoniously. However, Ismael's return proved her wrong. A year later, the family returned from Bishkek to her native Tokmak to live near her parents. The return was joyful because Ismael was expecting her second child. Ismael was walking with her son on the playground near her home and met several classmates. They said hello and had a nice conversation. However, returning home from the walk, Ismael again received a strong blow to the face. The blow was so strong that she fell and slipped on the linoleum. Unfortunately, this blow and fall triggered a miscarriage. After moving to Tokmak, Azamat became Ismael's obsessions. He discreetly followed her on the streets, continuously seeking reasons for new conflicts. He had developed a taste for it and could no longer resist the urge to beat her, though the kind and attentive Azamat that Ismael once knew had been completely replaced by a man consumed by anger and hatred. Ismael resigned herself to living under his absolute control for the sake of her children. Even after Ismael's mother, aware of the family drama, took Ismael to her own home, the abuse did not stop. Azamat kept returning, begging for forgiveness and promising it would not happen again. Tradition intervened, as in Kyrgyzstan, a son must grow up with his father, and Ismael ended up going back home 5 times. Life became a nightmare for Ismael, and she tried seeking help from the police, but there is no criminal sentence for domestic violence in Kyrgyzstan. The maximum penalty applied to Azamat was a 3-day stay in an isolation center, after which he would return, and the cycle would repeat itself for 6 years. Azamat did not even want to consider divorce. He threatened that if Ismael filed for it, he would find and kill her, the children, and her family. During the worst of the beatings, Ismael's family took her to Italy, where she worked tirelessly as a nurse, cleaner, and dog walker, saving money for an apartment and a small business, in order to become financially independent and leave her tyrannical husband. After 3.5 years in Italy, Ismael had saved enough to achieve her goals. During this time, she had seen many new things, communicated with interesting people, and gradually recovered her mental state. However, her maternal heart ached for her children, whom she had had to leave for so long, though she was reassured that their father never abused them. Ismael's return to Kyrgyzstan revealed her children living in deplorable conditions. A single cramped room where they slept, ate, played, and even used the bathroom. Deprived of education and outdoor activities, they were instead sent to a madrasa, a Muslim religious and educational institution, where they learned religion and the Quran. Azamat had raised them as true Turkic men and subjected them to harsh, unforgiving circumstances. Determined to escape this cruel captivity, Ismael took her children. However, Azamat's relentless pursuit continued, with him calling her and insisting on meeting. Ismael was firm, warning that she would file a police report if he continued to harass her, but her warnings fell on deaf ears. One evening, as Ismael was on her way to buy dishwashing detergent, Azamat confronted her again. He grabbed her, threatened her with a knife, and then took her to a remote, dark location where he brutally beat and raped her. Ismael reported the incident to the police, and a criminal case was opened against Azamat. Ismael's family was confident that he would be put on trial, and the torment would finally end. However, Azamat's family became actively involved, unable to accept that their son was a tyrant. Azamat's mother and sisters repeatedly pleaded with Ismael to withdraw the application. As in Kyrgyzstan, a woman is not expected to report her husband because it is considered a great shame. Through deception, they succeeded, and Ismael withdrew the application in exchange for Azamat's application for relinquishment of parental rights, though he remains officially their father. The Salford District Court dismissed the case due to the victim's counter-application and the reconciliation of the parties. Upon his release, Azamat started a new wave of harassment and threats, sending daily threatening messages to Ismael. He changed phone numbers to relentlessly continue his pressure. He openly said in voice messages that if he caught her, he would kill her. He waited for her in the driveway, at her workplace, and followed her everywhere for 3 months. Aisel's relatives took turns living with her and her children, protecting her from Azamat's attacks. But this did not save the woman from a second act of violence on January 31st, 2023. The woman went to the police again and reported that her ex-husband had once again used force against her. A criminal case was also opened, and the suspect was detained. After the investigation, the materials were sent to the court. The family was waiting for the decision and expected a real term of at least 5 years. On the day when the trial was to take place, the judge and 2 prosecutors invited Ismael to a separate office. Azamat was there, in front of her eyes. They removed his handcuffs, informing him that they had applied 3 years of probation instead of 5 years of imprisonment. In fact, he remained free. The court considered such a decision appropriate because Azamat has an elderly mother with a disability and 2 children from his marriage to the victim. Ismael was in a state of distress, feeling trapped in the darkest of corners with no apparent way out. Despair and fear had once again firmly established themselves in her life. However, Ismael decided not to wait for further attacks. She no longer trusted anyone and refused to listen to Azamat's relatives. Ismael documented all the abuse, hired a lawyer, and filed an appeal with the regional court. The lawyers presented the court with all the threats in the messages and voice recordings, and this time the case proceeded to trial. But a series of different events constantly postponed the hearing, bringing closer the worst day for Ismael. First, the lawyer fell ill, and the trial was postponed for a month. The second and third hearings were also postponed for inexplicable reasons. At the 4th hearing, Ismael begged not to postpone the hearing any longer because she was afraid not of beatings but of death. Azamat continued to walk around freely and make attempts on Aisel's life. On the eve of the meeting, he sent her a photo of a black backpack with a knife and a rope, with the caption, "I am ready to meet you at the bottom." However, due to Azamat's refusal of the state lawyer and the involvement of a private lawyer in the case was again postponed indefinitely. With such indifference from the justice and law enforcement agencies, Ismael simply had no chance to save herself. September 20th, 2023 began as usual at 6:30 a.m. Ismael woke up her children, they had breakfast together, and the caring mother accompanied her eldest son to school, wishing him a good day. Ismael was about to leave the house too, so she didn't close the door. Finishing getting ready, she brushed her hair as the front door suddenly opened. Azamat came in very quickly and very aggressively. Ismael did not have time to react and close herself in the bathroom. He immediately hit her twice on the head, after which Ismael fell into a state of confusion, not understanding what was happening. After striking her head, Azamat grabbed her by the throat and began strangling her. Ismael lost consciousness. At times, she heard Azamat's voice, and it seemed to her that everything was a terrible dream, but the loud crying of her son brought her back to reality. Ismael realized that she was awake. The boy covered himself with a blanket and, crying, repeated, "Daddy, don't do it." But his father ordered him to keep silent, otherwise he would harm him too. Ismael did not remember how she went from the bathroom, where she had tried to hide, to the kitchen. He threw the unfortunate woman to the floor like an unwanted object, then picked her up again and continued to abuse her. In a moment, the perpetrator had lifted Ismael up again and leaned her against the wall and was stabbing her face and neck with a clerical knife in cold blood. The next time Ismael regained consciousness, she looked around and saw that everything was covered in blood, but she didn't realize what was happening. She had lost a lot of blood, and her throat was dry. She kept asking for a drink. Her once beloved husband brought her a bucket of rags, and in it was water mixed with blood. The perpetrator had developed such a strong taste for blood that he selected a knife from the kitchen, trying out various options to find the one that would reach Ismael's heart. However, Suddenly, the door opened, and police officers entered the house. It turned out that a neighbor from the downstairs apartment had heard the scream and, aware of the difficult situation between Ismael and her ex-husband, had called the police, which saved her life by preventing the horrific torture. Azamat Estebesov resisted and attacked the officers with a knife. In the ensuing chaos, no one realized the full extent of what had happened. The entire apartment was drenched in blood. Azamat had started cutting Ismael in the bathroom, then dragged her to the kitchen through the hallway. He had cut off his ex-wife's nose and ears and inflicted multiple wounds on her face and neck. He had cut her throat, slashed her face, and beaten her severely. The district police officers arrived and called an ambulance. After assessing Ismael's appearance, they began to look for the cut organs in a hurry, but they were nowhere to be found. Would you be surprised to know where they found the woman's ears and nose? In the monster's pocket. In pursuit of lost time, the police officers took Ismael by their car to the 4th City Hospital in Bishkek. But there they did not provide her with first aid, explaining that according to her medical record, she did not belong to their hospital. Not only did the doctors fail to provide the victim with first aid, but they did not even stop the bleeding. Only in the 2nd hospital did she receive first aid and stop the bleeding. She was then sent to the National Hospital, where she underwent a 9-hour surgery. 6 doctors worked meticulously to restore Ismael's face. The amputated organs that were found were carefully delivered by the district police officers. The doctors meticulously collected everything, as the earlobes and nerve nodes were completely severed. Azamat did this with a special knife. The nose was also completely cut off. In the hospital, Ismael did not regain consciousness for a long time. She miraculously survived, but psychologists warned that her recovery would be long and very dangerous. She was disfigured. A criminal case under the article causing grave harm to health of the Criminal Code of the KGS Republic was initiated on the fact of the attack. The police detained the suspect in the commission of the crime, and he was sent to a pretrial detention center on September 27, 2023. The sentence against Azamat Estebesov was changed to 8 years of imprisonment by presidential decree. 9 judges were dismissed from their posts. Among them is the judge of Soik District Court of CH Region, Kelbek Toto Mamatov, who released the man under probation supervision. The decree of the head of state says that Toto Mamatov was dismissed in connection with the violation of the requirements of impeccable behavior of a judge. In addition to him, Sadir Japaro, by decree of November 1st, at the suggestion of the Council of Judges, prematurely terminated the powers of a number of judges who, in one way or another, violated the requirements of impeccability. 6 investigators were involved in the further investigation of the incident. They brought up all the previous cases of Azamat Estebesov and studied them again. They took into account all the facts they found, and on them, in the new indictment case, there were already 11 articles. At the end of December 2023, all investigative activities were completed, and on January 9, 2024, the first court hearings began. Azamat Estebesov did not admit guilt for any of the 11 charges he was facing. He persistently evaded answering the judge's questions, and in some instances claimed he was possessed by a demon, which prevented him from speaking. His aggressive behavior towards the witnesses led to the trial being postponed. On January 26, 2024, the final closed court session was held. Judge Tulkadir Kolova, after considering all the details of the complex case, sentenced Azamat Estebesov to 20 years of imprisonment without the right to apply for probation. Additionally, he must pay 2 million sums to his ex-wife and a fine of 880,000 sums to the state. Despite the imprisonment, Azamat continued to send threatening text messages to Ismael, warning that he would still go out and find her. The case of Ismael Naiva highlighted the powerlessness of a woman before the law of the country, and how a once loved and loving person can turn into a cold-blooded monster in an instant. Ismael's sister, Diana Yellen, appealed to the members of parliament to pass a law on domestic violence. She stated that if they do not, she will make them look at Asel's face without bandages and think about the consequences of their inaction. Asel's sister also published a petition asking for a life sentence without parole for her sister's ex-husband. She recalled that Asel had divorced her husband 5 years ago due to beatings and inadequate behavior, but he continued to stalk, beat, and abuse her even after the divorce. Asel has a new life and identity, but the suffering continues. She will undergo several operations to reconstruct her face, restore the frame of her ears and nose, and correct the 20% loss of her hearing. The difficulty is that these complex operations are not performed in Kyrgyzstan, and they require very large funds. However, a plastic surgeon from Turkey has offered to perform the surgery free of charge, covering all the costs. At first, the Kyrgyz doctors told him that Asel had only a portion of her nose remaining, but when the surgeon saw the woman's face without bandages, he was extremely shocked. It became clear that plastic surgery alone would not suffice in this case. First, a whole series of operations to restore her ears and her nose was needed. The surgery to restore the ears and nose of Asel, who was mutilated by her ex-husband, will cost at least $445,000. Asel's sister, Diana Yellen, who is actively engaged in disseminating information and raising funds for the operation, noted that all complex operations will be carried out in Turkey. Unfortunately, they have not raised even half of the needed $445,000. In addition, there are other expenses for accommodation, psychologist, rehabilitation, interpreter, medicines, and so on. Diana Yellen said, "I have more pictures of her without bandages, and they are very scary. They are not for the faint of heart. I have been unable to come to my senses since yesterday, and I can't accept this face because there is nothing left of her ears and nose." She thanked the doctors for doing everything they could, noting that the main thing is that sepsis and gangrene did not set in. The sister of the victim, Diana Yellen, notes that if they cannot raise the necessary amount of money in the near future, she will publish her sister's face without bandages, so that the whole world can see the true face of lawlessness, the true face of a victim of violence. She states that if the judge had not given probation to this monster a year ago, all this would not have happened. The family and Asel were hoping for the law and independent judges, but now they are making a challenge to everyone, a challenge to the judiciary of Kyrgyzstan. Diana regularly organized events to draw the attention of the Kyrgyz public to the problem of domestic violence against women. So far, fundraising has been held to help restore Asel Naya's health. Asel's support, despite the terrible ordeal she endured, is an example of courage and determination in the fight against violence. Asel, who herself has yet to recover mentally and physically from 12 years of beatings, dreams of opening a foundation to help women who have also been abused like herself. After being abused, you can't stop helping others. To conclude the story, the real ugliness that no one should see is not Asel's face at all, but the essence of her ex-husband. Even with fatigue and pain in her eyes, one can see that Asel is a very feminine, gentle, and beautiful woman. It does not matter how her face looks now, she is a beautiful woman, because her soul and heart are beautiful. I would like to appeal to all women: never tolerate and do not expect your chosen one to change. Run away and never come back. All nations have tyrants. Shadrach Tyrion was born on September 7, 1997, in Green Bay, Wisconsin. His parents were Tara Pinich and Michael Tyrion. Following his parents' separation, Tara started dating a man named Steve. Shad's family consisted of his parents, 2 sisters named Ava Weog and Svea Sunar Tyrion, and a brother named Bo Smith. During his childhood, Shad attended Howard and SWO schools before eventually joining the family business with his father and grandfather. Shad was a lively person who loved camping, gaming, and spending time with his family. He had a talent for wood carving and was recognized for his kindness and compassion, always putting others' needs first. His tragic end is particularly poignant considering his empathetic nature and tight-knit family. On February 23, 2022, as night fell, Shad told his family he was going out to meet two friends. His parents bid him goodbye around 9:30 p.m. Unbeknownst to them, danger awaited. Later that night, Shad's mother Tara returned, went to bed, unaware that Shad had already come home with Taylor and was in the basement. Early in the morning, Tara woke up to the sound of the front door closing as Taylor left. Worried, she went downstairs, called for her son, and, getting no response, decided to check the basement. Inside, she found a bucket covered with a rag. Removing it, she made a horrifying discovery: her son's head was inside. Shocked, she called police immediately. Upon deeper investigation, authorities found Shad's body parts in a bucket. Detectives checked Shad's phone records and discovered that on February 23rd, he had planned to meet two people, Taylor Shabiznes and Alexander Gannon. Taylor had picked up Shad to hang out at her place. After receiving a statement from Shad's mother, Tara, the police questioned Taylor Shabiznes and Alexander Gannon at their homes. Taylor resided in a house owned by her friend Scott Thomas, which they shared. Bloody footprints near Taylor's minivan at her place led the detectives to her apartment, where they decided to question Taylor further. Taylor complained about the dirty environment on camera, showing her indifference towards her actions towards Shad. The detective then asked her about her relationship with Shad, to which Taylor revealed he was her ex-boyfriend. She admitted to meeting Shad on February 23rd in her apartment, where Scott was also present. Scott was there when the police came to arrest Taylor, and she mentioned that the minivan belonged to Scott. Taylor was questioned about the activities of the three friends that night herself, Shad and Alexander Gannon. She readily admitted to smoking marijuana together. She said that she was giving Shad a haircut while the three of them smoked, but after some time, Alexander Gannon decided to go home, saying it was late. After Alexander Gannon left, Taylor and Shad decided to go to Shad's house, where he told her that his mother were going to be arriving home late. They went to Shad's house and consumed crystal methamphetamine. She also confessed to stealing trazodone from her friend Scott's drawer, and they both injected it using a needle. Taylor's admission of using drugs that night suggested that she might have a history of substance abuse, which added another complex layer to this case. The detective recognized that Taylor was under the influence of drugs during the questioning, but continued with the interrogation without hesitation. Taylor confessed to detective that Shad's remains were still in the basement. The detective further pressed her, asking for details about what exactly happened to Shad, but Taylor replied that she had blacked out after drinking and smoking for some time. This time, even though Taylor tried to find a way out by attempting to lie, she quickly realized that her tactics weren't working, and she had no other option except to confess. Later in the interview, Taylor admitted that she and Shad had been intimate that night, and there were also toys and other props involved, including a choke collar. As the interrogation continued, detective questioned her about the chains and other toys that they had found at the scene. Taylor admitted that she loved to strangle Shad, and he enjoyed it too. This reveals her sadistic and violent tendencies. When the detective continued asking Taylor where the other body parts were, she displayed a slight sense of regret for not bringing Shad's head with her. However, Taylor was not remorseful for her actions. Instead, she was dejected because of the mistake she'd made in leaving Shad's head in his basement, which eventually led the police to her. She provided clear answers to the detective, stating that some of Shad's body parts were inside the van, while the others remained in the basement. Her lack of remorse after committing such a heinous crime was startling. This might stem from a disturbed psyche or a potential mental health condition that hinders her ability to experience any emotions related to this atrocious crime. Another possibility is that she may have been under the influence of drugs, which could have prompted her to act on intrusive thoughts. However, the detectives were yet to uncover the whole truth. During the interrogation, she giggled often and laughed while giving details about the events of that night. Detective asked her that, remember what happened with Shad? She said that here comes the chain, and then he put it around his neck while they were playing around, and this shows again that Taylor did not understand how serious her actions were when she brutally dismembered her ex-partner. The detective saw Taylor's brutal and sadistic side when she said that she loved watching Shad's internal organs as she dismembered him with kitchen knives. She also added, in an almost casual tone, that she got lazy that night and didn't bother dismembering and moving all the body parts to her apartment. Taylor's casual behavior and detachment from the crime she just committed made the detective question whether she had intended for Shad to die from the beginning. When questioned about this, Taylor answered no, but there was no hint of remorse or repentance in her voice. She continued to describe the events of the night as if she were having a casual conversation, which slowly started to suggest that she may be dealing with mental health issues. Taylor confessed to strangling Shad with chains, finding pleasure in the act, and continuing even after Shad's death. She claimed an irresistible urge to kill those she loved too much, proving her awareness of Shad's murder. Taylor also admitted to engaging in sexual acts with Shad's corpse, displaying necrophiliac tendencies. Taylor expressed regret for not taking any drugs after the process, as she knew it would have helped her calm down. She admitted to feeling frustrated while dismembering Shad and cleaning up the mess, but she said she enjoyed the process. After confessing to the crime, Taylor briefly diverted the conversation by saying she messed up and didn't intend for those things to happen. However, while reenacting the scene of her strangling Shad that night, she was observed laughing without any hint of guilt or remorse in her voice, a clear indication of a person with a distorted psychological state. When the detective asked why Taylor didn't call for the police or an ambulance, she genuinely felt remorseful for her actions. Taylor did admit that she had considered it, but she was experiencing irrational thoughts after the murder. During another interrogation, the detective asked Taylor how she dismembered Shad's body, and Taylor proceeded to provide a vivid description of the gruesome act that took place that night. Her description of the details was more akin to reliving those moments to experience the thrill again. Taylor Denise Coronado, born in Evan, Illinois in November 1997, to parents Maria and Arturo Coronado, moved to Wisconsin with her family when she was in the 4th grade. Later in life, she married Warren Shabuznes, who was incarcerated at the time of the incident. They had a 2-year-old son named Matto. Despite this, Taylor engaged in sexual activities with her ex-partner, Shad Tyrion, after committing a gruesome crime. The police were aware that Taylor had significant mental health issues and desperately needed psychological assistance. They were certain that she was fully aware of her actions when she committed the crime, as she admitted multiple times that she enjoyed the act of dismembering Shad's body. Taylor also confessed to playing with the deceased Shad, using various toys, as well as performing oral acts on him. This deeply disturbed not only the investigators, but also the people around the world, who began to question the lack of humanity in individuals like Taylor Shabuznes. Taylor was arrested on February 23, 2022, for murdering and dismembering her ex-lover, Shad Tyrion. On July 24, 2022, the trial of Taylor Shabs began. Considering the gravity of the crime, the court had to determine if Taylor was sane during the time of the crime and if she knew her actions were wrong. During the trial, Taylor's grandmother testified that Taylor had a very difficult childhood. She lost her mother at an early age, and her father remarried. Taylor also lost her brother, Arturo Coronado Jr., in a motorcycle accident in 2021. Her husband, Warren Shabuznes, who also defended her in court, was already in prison for illegally distributing meth. Taylor's grandmother added that 24 hours after Taylor's son was born, he was taken away by Child Protective Services, but she and her husband were fighting for custody of their grandson, Matto. Growing up in such a toxic environment, Taylor had dealt with depression and bipolar disorder. The grandmother stated that Taylor needed psychological help and another chance to live her life. When Taylor's 51-year-old father, Arturo Coronado, came to give his testimony, he too had to be transported from prison, where he was serving a sentence for second-degree assault of a child. His testimony revealed that Taylor had some issues during her high school years. As a way to address these issues, her father sent her to live with her grandparents in Texas, where she eventually graduated. He also stated that shortly before Mata was born, Taylor was admitted to the Nicolet Psychiatric Center due to hallucinations and suicidal thoughts. The father added that Taylor was doing relatively well until her husband came into the picture and got her addicted to drugs. Similarly, when Taylor and Shad's mutual friend Alexander Gannon came to testify, Taylor continued to giggle and laugh throughout his testimony. Alexander confirmed that he had known Taylor and Shad since they attended Bellevue Middle School together and that the two were dating back then. He also provided his account of the day of the murder, stating that he was with them at Taylor's apartment, drinking, and left around 1 or 2 a.m. as it was getting late. Alexander further mentioned that he had tried to contact Shad the next day, but received no response. Taylor was seen wearing a spit guard, usually used for those attempting to spit on officers or court personnel during his next court appearance. Taylor's second cousin, Valerie, and some of his more distant relatives showed up to testify that while Taylor needed psychological treatment at the moment, he should be given another chance in the future. Shad's uncle, Kelly Tyrion, made a rather emotional statement. He emphasized the point that everyone goes through tough times in their lives, but that's no excuse for murdering someone so brutally, and her mental health issues shouldn't be a reason for the possibility of parole. When it was Shad's father, Michael Tyrion's turn, he made a surprising statement by forgiving Taylor for his actions. Michael expressed his forgiveness towards Taylor, acknowledging that he had made a regrettable decision that he now had to live with. He also shared fond memories of Shad, describing him as a kind and happy child. Despite the gravity of Taylor's actions, Michael extended forgiveness and expressed hope for Taylor's future. He mentioned the possibility of requesting the judge to consider allowing Taylor to re-enter society at some point, emphasizing that everyone makes mistakes and has the potential to change for the better. Michael chose not to harbor hatred towards Taylor, recognizing his humanity and wishing him well. Finally, the Assistant District Attorney, Caleb Saunders, concluded that what Taylor did to Shad was not due to substance abuse or mental health issues. She simply committed the crime because she enjoyed it. He added that Taylor's lack of remorse should earn her the highest possible sentence for this terrible crime. The defense attorney, Christopher Frolich, said that Taylor was not a lost cause or a monster, and despite having committed this irreversible and horrible crime, she should be given a second chance. He also classified the entire murder as an honest mistake. However, when he asked for a possible extension of the trial, the outburst displayed by Taylor in the court provided a clear indication to everyone that she was not merely a victim of substance abuse, but rather someone who was dealing with significant issues that required immediate attention. The trial concluded on September 26, 2022, where Judge Thomas Walsh sentenced Taylor Shabs to life imprisonment without the possibility of parole. This case shocked the entire world, as people were bewildered by how inhumanely Taylor had dismembered her former lover, Shad Tyrion. What's even more shocking was that the person showed no remorse or guilt for the horrible crime they committed. This raised questions about the state of humanity and society in the current time. Shad's family and friends came together to pray for his soul and spoke about how they'll never be able to heal from this tragic incident. It was also shocking that even after knowing the gravity of the crime committed by Taylor, her family was ready to defend her and blame her upbringing for the crime that she committed. Today's case was truly a disturbing one. It makes one question the lack of humanity and empathy in people like Taylor, who can easily dismember a person that once trusted her. It also highlights that strained family relationships and lack of parental guidance in a child's life when they're growing up can indeed create a monster like Taylor Shabs. Hello friends, welcome to our channel. Today, we're going to take a look at another horrible case with you. The case of Brianna Zunino. A lot of people are concerned that an autopsy is scheduled today to identify a woman's body that was found in Reno, Nevada on Friday. There is a possibility that it could be the missing college student, Brianna Dennison. The body was found in a field on the edge of the campus of the University of Nevada, which is less than 10 miles from the house where Dennison was last seen in the winter of 2008. Brianna Zunino Dennison, a vibrant 19-year-old college student with a bright future, vanished without a trace, sending shockwaves through the community and igniting a relentless search for answers. As news of Brianna's disappearance spread, an army of volunteers, law enforcement agencies, and concerned citizens came together, determined to bring her home safely. Brianna's family and friends, gripped by fear and uncertainty, clung to hope while sharing stories of her infectious laughter, unwavering spirit, and love for life. Days turned into weeks and weeks into months as the search intensified. The quest for answers led investigators down a dark and twisted path, uncovering a heinous series of crimes. Law enforcement tirelessly pursued leads, meticulously piecing together the puzzle surrounding Brianna's disappearance. Their dedication and determination remained unwavering in their pursuit of justice. This is the story of Brianna Zunino Dennison, a young woman whose life was tragically cut short, but whose memory continues to inspire. Brianna Zunino Dennison was born on March 29, 1988, to Jeff Dennison and Bridget Dennison. Her mother lovingly called her Breezy because she reminded her of a refreshing breeze on a cool summer day. When Brianna was 6 years old, her father passed away, which was a difficult time for the family, as the loss of a loved one always is. However, she persevered through the pain with the support of her loved ones. She spent her childhood in Reno, Nevada, and her mother's native town of Mendocino, California. Brianna's passion for traveling and world cultures took her to Hawaii, New York, Mexico, Jamaica, Japan, Italy, Egypt, Hungary, Austria, and France. She studied abroad in Rome, Italy, for a year with her family. Her ability to connect with people from all walks of life became part of her radiant personality. Brianna was raised in a tradition that valued children as the most precious possessions. Her relatives and close friends instilled in her the importance of being a loving, spiritual, respectful, and trusting human being. She had a deep affection for children and animals, particularly her dog, Ozzy. Brianna graduated from Reno High School in 2006 and was a sophomore at Santa Barbara City College, where she was majoring in child psychology. On January 20, 2008, Brianna returned home to Reno from sunny Santa Barbara during the winter break to visit some friends and family. She and her friends had attended events organized by Summer Winter Action Tours LLC, a travel agency that catered to students. They also attended the Martin Luther King Jr. Gala weekend in Reno, which Brianna had reportedly attended in the past. On that specific day, she was last observed alive at approximately 4 a.m. Pacific time at her friend's house near the University of Nevada campus on McKay Court in Reno. She had gone there to sleep after attending a party at the Sands Regency on North Arlington Avenue. When her friend woke up the next morning around 9 a.m., Brianna was nowhere to be found. A small blood stain was noticed on the pillow where Brianna had slept that night, and her cell phone, purse, and shoes were all left at the house, which prompted her friend to alert Brianna's parents and local authorities. When investigators arrived, they assessed the crime scene. In the following days, detectives conducted a forensic investigation of the McKay Court residence where Brianna was staying when she was abducted. They found DNA on a doorknob that belonged to an unidentified male. The investigators were able to confirm that the blood on the pillow belonged to Brianna and began focusing on a kidnapping scenario. The detectives began searching the University of Nevada Reno area for Brianna, and the Federal Bureau of Investigation, FBI, joined the search efforts. The DNA found on the doorknob the night Brianna disappeared was linked to at least 2 sexually motivated attacks in the same area in the previous months, one on November 13th and the second on December 16, 2007. On January 29, 2008, a woman from Reno claimed that she knew another victim who had revealed that she was raped at gunpoint in a garage on the University of Nevada Reno campus in October 2007. However, the victim had not reported the crime. The investigators released a description of the potential suspected perpetrator based on this information, which was considered a positive lead. Identifiers used by women who had been sexually assaulted by the suspect were used to track down the perpetrator. The detectives began interviewing nearly 100 registered sex offenders who live within a mile of the McKay Court home, but none seemed to be responsible for Brianna's disappearance. Around 1,700 people, including Nevada's then First Lady, Dawn Gibbons, wife of then Governor Jim Gibbons, volunteered to participate in a physical search of a 100-square-mile area to find Brianna, who went missing, but to no avail. On February 15, 2008, a man named Albert Jimenez in Reno was just returning from his lunch break at a Subway restaurant. As he was walking by the road, he noticed bright orange-colored fabrics standing out among a pile of discarded tree limbs lying in a ditch near a Reno business park. When he approached closer, he discovered neon orange socks which were attached to feet, which at first he thought was a mannequin, but later turned out to be a woman. Jimenez had heard about Brianna Dennison's kidnapping, but didn't think the victim resembled the photographs he had seen on billboards. Jimenez did not have a mobile phone, so he promptly returned to his workplace, EE Technologies, to call the Reno police. When the police arrived at the South Reno lot, Jimenez was informed that the victim was Brianna Dennison, as an autopsy report had confirmed that the body found in a field near a Reno business park was hers. Brianna had been assaulted and killed. A piece of underwear was also found near Brianna's body, along with DNA evidence from the perpetrator and an unknown female. The police believed that the underwear did not belong to Brianna and might have been left there to taunt the investigators. The police then asked anyone who recognized the underwear as theirs to come forward, as they might have information about the perpetrator's identity, but no one came forward. On January 29, 2008, the Reno police released a description of the unknown perpetrator. The person in question was also linked to at least 2 sexual assaults in November and December 2007, and a woman claimed to have been raped in a parking lot in October. Previous victims had provided enough detailed information for the police to sketch a suspect. An item of underwear was found near Dennison's body, along with the killer's DNA and the DNA of an unidentified woman. The police stated that the item of clothing did not belong to Dennison and may have been left near her body to taunt the investigators. The police are asking anyone who recognizes the item of clothing as theirs to come forward, as they may know the identity of the perpetrator. On Tuesday, November 25, 2008, 27-year-old James Michael Bella from Sparks, Nevada, was arrested and taken into custody at the Washoe County Jail. He was charged with murder, first-degree kidnapping, and sexual assault. Bella was apprehended while he was dropping off his son at the Stepping Stones Children's Center in Reno. Bella had already provided the police with a DNA sample collected from a doorknob in Brianna's friend's house. The detectives also discovered that Bella was a former Marine and had been previously arrested in 2001 for threatening his former girlfriend's neighbor with a knife. On Wednesday, November 26, 2008, during a press conference held by the Reno Police Department, it was confirmed that the DNA collected from Bella matched the DNA found at the crime scene, positively linking him to the murder of Brianna Dennison and a previous sexual assault. It was also revealed that a friend of his girlfriend had turned in Bella via the secret witness program on November 1, 2008, after Bella's girlfriend had confided to this friend that she had found underwear unknown to her in Bella's truck as they were coming back from Washington State, where Bella had taken a job in March 2008. News media reports of Brianna's case, including a police sketch of the suspect and a description of a vehicle used in another rape, the month before Brianna's abduction, began circulating. Bella was questioned by detectives about his atrocity after the secret witness tip came in, but he denied his involvement and declined to provide a DNA sample. Bella's girlfriend was also questioned and gave police permission to obtain DNA from her 4-year-old son, whom Bella had fathered. The test confirmed that his direct relative, Bella in this case, had left a DNA sample collected at the home where Brianna Dennison was abducted and at the other rape that had taken place the prior month. On his way to Washington, it was also revealed that Bella had sold his truck in Idaho, which matched the description of the vehicle used in the previous sexual assault. At the press conference, officials mentioned that the vehicle was being returned to Reno to be searched and used as evidence in the case against him. On Thursday, May 27, 2010, Bella was found guilty of the murder of Brianna Dennison, and after deliberating for about 9 hours, the jury returned a guilty verdict for all counts against Bella, which included kidnapping, sexual assault, and murder. The defense attorneys argued against the death penalty, stating that Bella suffered an abusive childhood due to an alcoholic father, that he had been a productive member of society before his crimes, and that he was a model prisoner. However, the jurors did not accept these mitigating factors and handed out the death sentence. On July 30, 2010, Bella was sentenced to 4 additional life sentences for multiple counts of rape and kidnapping associated with attacks on 2 victims before Brianna's abduction and murder. Over the years, Bella's appeals have been denied. The story of Brianna Zunino Dennison is one of resilience, heartbreak, and the unyielding pursuit of justice. Brianna's family, who faced unimaginable pain and uncertainty, stood strong in their fight for justice. Their unwavering determination became a beacon of hope for others facing similar tragedies. The legacy of Brianna's story reaches far beyond her case. It has sparked crucial conversations, inspired community initiatives, and brought awareness to the issues of violence and safety. Law enforcement's tireless efforts ultimately led to the apprehension and conviction of the individual responsible for Brianna's abduction and murder. Their dedication and unwavering commitment to finding justice showcase the power of teamwork and determination. As we remember Brianna, we hold on to the memories of her vibrant spirit, her love for life, and the impact she had on those who knew her. Her story serves as a reminder of the importance of community, compassion, and standing up against violence. In the end, Brianna Zunino Dennison's legacy will live on not only through the love of her family and friends, but through the collective efforts to create a safer world for others. May her memory continue to inspire change and hope. Rest in peace, Brianna Zunino Dennison. Hello friends, welcome to our channel. Today we're going to take a look at another horrible case with you, the case of Rena Verk. On the fateful date of November 14, 1997, the vibrant life of 14-year-old Rena Verk met a heartbreaking and tragic end. A group of her peers had lured her to a party where they had orchestrated a sinister plot against her. As the night unfolded, her absence raised concern among her family, triggering an unsettling realization that she hadn't returned home, and no one could account for her departure from the ill-fated gathering. They reported her missing, but initially, the police did little to locate her due to her history as a runaway and her past troublesome behaviors. Tragically, her lifeless body was eventually discovered, and the dark truth behind her death would be uncovered by the investigators. Rena Verk was born on March 10, 1983, in Saanich, a district municipality on Vancouver Island in British Columbia, Canada. She came from an extended family that traced its roots back to India. Rena's mother, Suman, hailed from an Indo-Canadian family, while her father, Manjit, was an immigrant from India. Rena's parents underwent a religious conversion from Hinduism and started embracing the beliefs of Jehovah's Witnesses, despite being part of the Saanich community where there was a prevalent schism among Indo-Canadians. Growing up, Rena struggled with the persistent awareness of being an outsider, yearning for acceptance from her peers. Sadly, she became the target of relentless bullying due to her unconventional appearance and ethnic background in a predominantly white school. Her non-mainstream looks, combined with being overweight and having brown skin, set her apart, exacerbating her challenges. Rena also faced the burden of adhering to her parents' strict religious principles, a stark contrast to her peers who were starting to explore newfound freedom from parental control. Concerns heightened when her parents discovered the prolonged bullying she had endured since starting school. They suspected this may have taken a toll on her mental well-being, leading her into depression. In May 1994, the family relocated, and Rena transferred from Burnside Elementary School. Her parents hoped this move would end the persistent bullying, and initially it seemed to be working. Rena's spirits had been lifted, and she even forged a new friendship that brought her considerable joy. However, this positive turn took a downturn when the newfound friends shunned her and distanced themselves, reigniting the cycle of bullying. In 1996, Rena completed her elementary education and enrolled at Colquitt's Middle School. There, she befriended a group of peers she considered the cool kids. This group disregarded curfews, consumed alcohol, and smoked, embodying the freedom that Rena craved, a liberation from her strict parents and their religious rules. Although Rena felt accepted by her new social circle, her parents disapproved, leading to an increase in her rebellious conduct. In this turbulent phase, Rena's father, Manjit, recalled imparting a piece of wisdom to his daughter, saying, "Bad associations spoil useful habits." In 1996, at the age of 13, Rena received some advice from a friend, suggesting a way to leave her home. The friend proposed that she could enter foster care by informing the police of alleged physical assault. Acting on this advice, Rena reported her parents for assault, but no charges were filed due to insufficient evidence. Consequently, she was temporarily removed from her family and resided with her grandparents, who believed her account. Taking a troubling turn, Rena falsely accused her father of sexual assault in 1997, causing significant trauma to him. Her father faced arrest on charges of sexually assaulting Rena, leading to his incarceration awaiting a trial. Ultimately, her father's charges were dismissed when she confessed to fabricating the assault allegations. Expressing discomfort in her grandparents' home, Rena was then relocated to the foster home where she wanted to go. There, she formed connections and began mimicking her newfound friends, who often smoked and always discussed gangs, where she even falsely claimed to be affiliated with one. After a while, Rena realized that living in a foster home did not meet her expectations, as she still had responsibilities and a curfew. Therefore, she apologized to her parents and returned home. Later on, she decided to leave her parents' house again, choosing to stay in a youth shelter before eventually being placed in government care. Over the following months, she found herself caught in a cycle, moving between her parents' home, foster care, and youth shelters. This tumultuous relationship with her parents, social workers, and government officials portrayed the struggles of a bewildered teenager. Desiring acceptance and friendship, she saw her strict religious upbringing and overprotective parents as outdated or culturally disconnected. She seemed willing to go to great lengths to gain peer approval. Middle school was the most confusing and emotionally draining period of her life. In his 2008 book, Rena, A Father's Story, Manjit Virk detailed the family's anguish in dealing with their daughter, expressing his belief that Rena manipulated social workers and family members. He lamented the lack of belief in their side of the story and the widespread acceptance of Rena's narratives. Rena, yearning for acceptance from those who had previously rejected her, eagerly sought their approval. The invitation to a party on November 14, 1997, likely stirred excitement in her, as it presented an opportunity to socialize with the cool kids. The event initially took place during an overnight stay with her parents behind a Saanich school, but was later relocated to the nearby Craigflower Bridge after police intervention. Unfortunately, the party did not unfold as Rena had envisioned. At 10:40 p.m., just 20 minutes before her curfew, Rena reached out to her parents, informing them that she was on her way home. Tragically, this phone call was the last time Rena's parents would communicate with her. At the Craig Flower Bridge, a group of teenagers were consuming marijuana and alcohol. Suddenly, several girls affiliated with a gang called the Shoreline Six targeted Rena. They subjected her to a brutal assault, physically beating her, placing a lit cigarette on her forehead, and even trying to set her hair on fire. The attack continued until one of the girls intervened and ordered the others to stop. Witnesses noted that the assault seemed unprovoked. After the initial attack was halted, Rena attempted to flee and return home, but two teenagers, 15-year-old Kelly Ard and 16-year-old Warren Glowatsky, chased after her. They dragged Rena to the other side of the Craig Flower Bridge, where the violent assault continued with punches and kicks. Tragically, they submerged her head underwater until she succumbed to her injuries. Following her death, they removed her sweater and shoes, then pushed her lifeless body into the water. Growing increasingly worried as Rena did not return home by her curfew, her parents initially assumed she might have spent the night at her grandparents' house, but she was not there. She was also not the group home. They contacted one of Rena's friends, who revealed that she was still at the party when the friend left around 11 p.m. The next day, Rena's family reported her missing, but the police response was slower due to her history of running away, which was attributed to her past behavior. Rumors about a severe beating and a body found in the nearby gorge waterway circulated among the students at Central Intermediate School, where the teenagers involved attended. The members of the Shoreline Six group, aware of the situation, maintained a code of silence, vowing not to betray each other. Despite the prevalent rumors, an eyewitness eventually came forward to the police, stating that she had seen Kelly and Warren follow Rena after the beating. Surprisingly, a week passed before a police investigation was initiated, after Rena was reported missing. Despite numerous witnesses and teachers hearing rumors about the incident, for some unknown reasons, none had reported the information to the police. Instead, it took a student coming forward as a witness to prompt police involvement on November 21, 1997. Glowatsky and Elard were arrested and charged with murder and aggravated assault. The members of the Shoreline Six faced aggravated assault charges, but their identities remained unknown and protected under Canada's Young Offenders Act. On November 22nd, a police helicopter flew over the Craig FL Bridge area, but no signs were observed until a ground search was conducted. The search revealed a body concealed in weeds, later identified as that of the missing teenager, Rena Verk. The forensic pathologist determined that drowning was the cause of death. Subsequent autopsy findings disclosed that Rena had sustained a significant injury with head injuries, severe enough to have been fatal, even without drowning at the time of her tragic demise. Rena was just 14 years old. In February 1998, the 6 girls involved in the initial attack on Rena were prosecuted in youth court, and as stated earlier, their identities remained shielded from the public. 3 of the girls admitted guilt to the charge of assault causing bodily harm, while the other 3 underwent a trial and were subsequently convicted of the same offense. Sentences varied, ranging from a 60-day conditional sentence to 1 year in jail. As for Elard and Glowatsky, who were charged with Rena's murder, they faced a different legal process. Despite their ages, they were tried in adult court due to the severe nature of the crime. Warren Glowatsky had experienced a challenging upbringing, marked by the absence of his alcoholic mother for a significant part of his life. Around the time of Rena's murder, he had found himself residing at a friend's house, following his father's departure from British Columbia to live in California without him. In April 1999, Glowatsky's trial commenced, and by June of the same year, he was found guilty of second-degree murder, resulting in a life sentence. As a minor at the time of the crime, he was eligible for parole after serving 7 years in prison. During his incarceration, Glowatsky discovered his Métis heritage, allowing him to involve tribal elders in his parole process. This process included various restorative justice measures, involving meeting with Rena's family. In July 2006, he received unescorted temporary absences from jail and was ultimately released on full parole in June 2010. Rena's family did not oppose the parole request, as they believed Glowatsky demonstrated genuine remorse for his actions. In stark contrast, Kelly Ard hailed from a more stable and traditional family that provided support during the trial. She was 15 years old at the time of Rena's murder. Despite her lawyer's request to have her case tried in youth court, the Supreme Court of Canada rejected this plea due to the level of violence involved in the crime and an apparent lack of remorse. Initially convicted of second-degree murder in March 2000, her conviction was overturned in January 2003 on grounds of an unfair trial. Released on bail while awaiting her appeal, Ard had served 18 months of her life sentence. However, during this period of release pending a new trial, she faced charges of assault causing bodily harm for beating a 58-year-old woman in a Vancouver park. Her bail was revoked, and she was returned to prison by March 2004. In June 2004, Kelly Ard faced a new trial. Witnesses testified that she had boasted about being responsible for Rena's death. Glowatsky claimed that he had witnessed Ard drowning Rena, but Ard's lawyer questioned Glowatsky's credibility, highlighting alleged inconsistencies in his initial statements to the police and during the trial. Throughout her trial, Ard admitted to assaulting Rena, claiming it was in defense of her friends, as she thought that Rena was going to hurt them. She vehemently denied committing murder, shifting the blame and asserting that Glowatsky and two other girls were the ones responsible for Rena's death. Ard expressed a resigned acceptance of an impending conviction, stating, "I'm obviously going to be convicted. You've got what you want. My life is ruined." Ard showed no remorse for her actions and failed to disclose the motive behind the planned attack. After deliberating for 5 days, the jury reached an impasse, leading to a mistrial declared by the judge in July 2004. In February 2005, Kelly Ard faced a new trial with Glowatsky once again serving as the key witness. Glowatsky reiterated his testimony, affirming that he and Ard had assaulted Rena, leaving her lifeless in the water, on April 12, 2005. Ard was convicted for the second time of second-degree murder and received a life sentence with no chance of parole for 7 years. However, in September 2008, the British Columbia Court of Appeal overturned Ard's second-degree murder conviction, ordering a fourth trial on the grounds that the judge in her third trial had provided incorrect instructions to the jury regarding the testimony presented in the case. This legal saga finally concluded in June 2009, when the Supreme Court of Canada upheld her conviction for second-degree murder, putting an end to the prolonged legal proceedings. In 2017, Ard was granted day parole, and by 2019 she received additional privileges such as overnight leaves and extended day parole. The Parole Board of Canada approved the continuation of Ard's day parole, a decision that drew significant media attention on July 14, 2020, as Ard, who had initially received a life sentence, was now serving time on day parole. During her time on parole, Ard changed her name to Kerry Sim, started a family with her spouse, and had 2 children. She adhered to the conditions of her parole, including abstaining from alcohol and drugs, and maintaining no contact with Rena's family. The lingering question throughout this time revolved around the motive behind the teenager's decision to beat up Rena and end up murdering her. One supposed reason was revenge. Rena had previously lived in a group home with 2 of the girls involved in the assault, who accused her of stealing her phone book and making calls while spreading rumors. Another girl claimed she harbored resentment towards Rena for allegedly stealing her boyfriend in the year 2000. When Rena's parents took legal action against the teenagers involved, as well as the British Columbia government and other parties, Rena's father stated, "Society doesn't hold people accountable for their actions. This is one way to make them responsible." In 2012, Rena's mother addressed her daughter's tragic death and the detrimental impact of bullying on young individuals. She shared, "For a long time, we were consumed with the legal aspects of dealing with our murdered child, the courts prolonging the cases, and it's as if you had to put your feelings and your grief on hold. I'm finding that now I'm feeling more of the impact of losing Rena, the emotions and feelings. So actually I'm struggling more now and missing her more." Rena's parents started anti-bullying campaigns and inclusion programs in response to the tragedy. They pushed the government to implement anti-bullying measures in schools. Through their persistent efforts, the government introduced an anti-bullying program in recognition of their impactful advocacy. Rena's parents were awarded the Anthony J. Hume Award of Distinction in 2009 for their dedication to crime prevention and community safety. It is indeed sad what Rena endured until her end. Though her actions were troubling, they're somewhat understandable given typical teenage yearnings to belong, which can have both good and bad results. Despite the hardships, her family continued to love her, even after the false charges and awful acts blamed on them. Their love persisted, as they only wished for her well-being. Our deepest condolences go to the life lost too early and the grieving family she left behind. Hello friends, welcome to our channel. Today we're going to take a look at another horrible case with you, the case of Neil Entwistle. In the peaceful town of Hopkinton, Massachusetts, a family's story unfolded in a sad and surprising way, sharing a compelling tale that interested the entire nation. This is the story of Neil Entwistle and Rachel Souza, a story of love, lies, and a tragedy that destroyed the belief in a flawless life. Neil and Rachel are a happy couple with a new baby. Neil is from Britain and works in IT, while Rachel is an American mother who takes good care of their daughter. Despite seeming to have it all, they were actually facing some hidden tensions that led to a tragic outcome. Neil Entwistle was born on September 18, 1978, in Worksop, Nottinghamshire, England, to Clifford and Yvonne Entwistle. He grew up in a humble household with his younger brother Russell. His father used to work as a miner before becoming a labor advisor, while his mother worked as a cook in a school cafeteria. After finishing high school, Neil went to the University of York to study electronic engineering and business management. While at university, he met Rachel Souza, an American student studying abroad. Rachel, originally from Kingston, Massachusetts, had attended Silver Lake Region High School before moving to Holy Cross College in Worcester. She spent a year at York University, where she met Entwistle while both were on the rowing team. Neil was described as reserved and not very social, but his peers noticed his quiet nature. On the other hand, Rachel was seen as lively and outgoing, and she was popular in the community. Her American background added a special charm to her personality, making her a positive presence on the rowing team. As their relationship deepened, Neil Entwistle and Rachel Souza found themselves increasingly drawn to each other, spending more time together. Benjamin Pryor, a close friend from their college days, later provided testimony about their relationship, describing their interactions as marked by enjoyment and a strong sense of ease, leading observers to perceive them as a genuinely affectionate couple. While Neil worked at a defense technology and security company in Malvern, Worcestershire, Rachel focused on her career in education. She finished her studies in 2002 and started teaching English, drama, and theatre studies at St. Augustine's Catholic High School in Reading, showing her dedication to guiding young minds through the arts. Neil jokingly described his job as making bombs and other items. He happily announced his engagement to Rachel, whom he called the most amazing woman. They met through rowing and were deeply connected. Neil was satisfied with his upcoming marriage, despite not being completely happy about living south of the Birmingham border. In August 2003, the couple got married in Plymouth, UK, and Massachusetts, USA. After their US wedding, they had a reception in the UK in November of the same year. Neil shared the start of their married life in Worcester on a family website he made, sharing memories from their trip to the Mediterranean in Christmas 2004. In April 2005, Neil and Rachel welcomed their daughter, Lillian Rose, into the world, marking a significant turning point in their lives. This new addition to their family prompted them to decide to relocate to the United States. They initially resided in Carver, Massachusetts, with Rachel's mother, Priscilla Mataran's stepfather Joseph, until January 12, 2006, when they secured a home of their own in Hopkinton. Their new residence, nestled on a quiet cul-de-sac with only 8 neighbors, offered a tranquil setting just a short distance from the nearest major city. The 5-bedroom colonial-style rental property came with a monthly rent of $1,500, reflecting the upscale nature of their accommodation. Neil struggled to find a job as a computer programmer and IT specialist, which led to financial difficulties and debt. To ease the situation, he started selling PC parts on eBay. However, his business faced issues with undelivered orders and drew attention from eBay's fraud investigator. It was discovered that Neil used multiple accounts with different names. During this period, Neil was also running a website called millionmaker.co.uk, promoting a get-rich-quick scheme for the adult entertainment industry. The site claimed to guarantee a monthly profit of $6,000 within 6 months, but was later shut down. Simultaneously, Neil was actively seeking sexual partners through various online platforms. He frequented websites in pursuit of such relationships. Neil registered on Adult Friend Finder and reached out to multiple women via email, expressing his interest in finding sexual partners. During the investigation, authorities discovered incriminating evidence on Neil's laptop, including content from his online profile, indicating his interest in meeting American women of various ages. His profile mentioned a desire to confirm rumors suggesting American women's superiority in bed compared to those from overseas. He expressed a mutual desire for a particular type of relationship, implying a straightforward approach to meeting like-minded individuals. In the weeks leading up to the tragic murders of Rachel and their daughter Lillian, Neil conducted a series of disturbing online searches, including inquiries about how to kill with a knife, interspersed with more mundane searches related to employment, travel, and get-rich-quick schemes. Additionally, during this period, Neil visited his father-in-law, Joe Matarazzo, who was a member of the Old Colony Sportsman's Club in Carver, where Neil had previously stored a .22 caliber revolver and received shooting lessons from Joe. Neil devised a plan to steal a gun from Joe's collection. At their home in Carver, Massachusetts, Neil made a trip to his in-laws' residence, retrieved the weapon from a concealed location in the house, and drove back to Hopkinton with the gun in his possession. Upon returning home, he discreetly concealed the firearm, biding his time for the opportune moment to carry out the tragic acts of violence against his family before taking his own life. On Friday, January 20, 2006, Neil entered the family's master bedroom, where they had been living for only 10 days. His wife Rachel and their infant daughter Lillian were sleeping in their new 4-poster bed. He crept inside and shot 27-year-old Rachel in the head, then proceeded to shoot 9-month-old Lillian, who was lying beside her mother. The bullet passed through Lillian's tiny body and pierced Rachel's left breast. Later that same day, while his in-laws were still at work, he returned to Carver to return the weapon without cleaning it. He later claimed that he had gone shopping at Staples that Friday, found his family dead upon returning home, and then went to Carver to get a pistol to commit suicide. However, he didn't contact emergency services, revealing a pattern of lies to cover his tracks. Upon leaving Carver, Neil drove to Logan Airport in Boston on the evening of January 20, 2006. He made 2 ATM withdrawals totaling $800, but 3 additional withdrawal attempts for $420 were declined. The following day, Saturday, January 21, 2006, Neil purchased a one-way ticket to London, carrying no luggage. Around 5 p.m., he boarded a British Airways flight that departed Boston at 8:15 p.m. On that Saturday evening, Neil had invited several neighbors for dinner. Shortly after 7 p.m., Joanna Gatley and her sister Maureen arrived at the home, but found it locked with the lights on inside. Concerned, they tried calling Rachel's mother, who had also planned to visit that day for lunch with her daughter, but had been unable to reach her. Alarmed, they decided to call 911 around 8:30. Police officers arrived at Neil's home to search for any signs of the missing family. Sergeant Michael Sutton described the scene, noting he could see into the bedroom, where there was a large bed in the center of the room that was unmade, with all the bedding appearing to be piled up. Other than the disheveled bed, nothing seemed out of place. After their search, the police locked up the house, left, and continued their patrol. Despite the police search, the Gatley sisters remained deeply concerned. They were so distressed that they decided to spend the night outside, in their car, waiting for the family's return, despite the cold. They made 3 trips to the gas station bathroom to endure the night while awaiting any news. On the following Sunday morning, the sisters managed to enter the house using the garage door code they obtained from a neighbor the previous night. Inside, they discovered dishes and leftovers in the kitchen, suggesting the family had recently finished a meal. The bathtub still held water, indicating that the couple had bathed their infant daughter. They proceeded to the main bedroom and then to Lillian's bathroom, where classical music was playing, and finally checked the living room before Rachel's mother and stepfather arrived. After assessing the situation together, they collectively decided it was time to report the family as missing to the Hopkinton Police Department. Sergeant Sutton returned to the Neil residence for a second search. As he entered the basement, he detected a new, unpleasant smell that was not present the day before. Following the odor through the house, he eventually reached the primary bedroom, where he found Rachel and Lillian deceased in the unmade 4-poster bed, covered with clothes. Rachel's arms were stretched over her infant's chest, with her feet curled beside her, and both were dressed in pajamas. The autopsy results revealed that Rachel died from a gunshot wound to the head, while Lillian had been shot in the torso. Additionally, Rachel's DNA was found on the gun barrel, while Neil's was discovered on the gun grip. Neil Entwistle, who was 27 years old at the time, was considered only a missing person during this period. Around 36 hours after returning to England, Neil visited his parents, Cliff and Ion. He had been driving around and had spent the previous night at a hotel. During this visit, he disclosed to them that he had discovered the bodies of his wife and daughter. On Monday, January 23, 2006, Neil engaged in a phone conversation with the Hopkinton police. This 2-hour phone call between Neil and Massachusetts State Trooper Robert Manning was recorded and subsequently played in its entirety during the court proceedings. Neil stated that upon discovering the bodies, he was overcome with fear and rushed to be with his family. He recounted to the police, "I covered them with the sheets, and all I could think about were the knives we had downstairs. I took out the large one and held it against myself. I was fearful of the pain it would cause. I just couldn't go through with it. I don't understand why I didn't call for emergency assistance." Failing to muster the resolve to harm himself with a knife, Neil informed the authorities that he drove the family vehicle to his father-in-law, Joe Matarazzo's residence, to retrieve a .22 LR caliber revolver. He claimed to have found the house locked, leading him to choose to return to England to be with his parents on January 26, 2006. US law enforcement officials traveled to the UK to interview Neil the following day, January 27th. After consulting with a lawyer at the workshop residence, he chose not to engage with the American detectives at the US Embassy in London, despite his voluntary presence there. Rachel and her daughter Lillian were laid to rest in Evergreen Cemetery in Kingston, Massachusetts, under the surname Souza. They were interred in a single casket, despite around 500 individuals attending the funeral to bid their final farewells. Neil was notably absent from the funeral, and his name was omitted from the proceedings and not inscribed on their shared headstone during the burial ceremony. Neil sent a single orange rose and a white lily, with a note attached to the ribbon that read, "My orange rose and my lily for always," signed off with Zokoko. Upon his return to the UK, Neil appeared to be resuming a routine life in February 2006, while media attention remained outside his parents' residence in workshop. He went to Notting Hill for a dinner gathering with his former crew team from York University, followed by a movie outing about a week after the funeral service for Rachel and Lillian on February 8, 2006. The Middlesex County District Attorney's Office issued an arrest warrant for Neil the following day, on February 9, 2006. Neil was apprehended by the extradition unit of London's Metropolitan Police Service at Royal Oak Station as he was about to board a train. Upon learning of the impending arrest, among his possessions was a notebook detailing his intention to sell his account to the highest bidder. In the notebook, he expressed affection for his orange rose and lily, referring to his wife as his dearest and closest friend on another page. Additionally, he had drafted 2 letters to the editor seeking to share his perspective on the events. Neil aimed to explain his perspective and communicated with a close friend and confidant to convey his intentions. In one of the letters, he inquired about the potential monetary value associated with exclusive rights for his full account. Ultimately, Neil decided not to challenge the extradition order, and he was transported back to the United States on February 15th. He appeared in Framingham District Court, where he was remanded without bail at Middlesex County Jail in Cambridge, Massachusetts. Following this, on March 28, 2006, Neil was formally charged with 2 counts of murder, as well as illegal possession of a firearm and ammunition. Despite the charges, he entered a plea of not guilty in December 2006, nearly a year after the tragic incident. Authorities at Middlesex County Jail, where Neil was detained, discovered letters he had written to his parents and legal team. These letters indicated that Neil was in a state of depression and suggested he might be contemplating suicide. Consequently, he was transferred to Bridgewater Hospital for psychiatric assessment before being returned to Middlesex County. Forensic psychiatrist Christopher Cordless attributed Neil's behavior to Asperger syndrome, a view that was supported by Dr. David Holmes. After several delays, the process of selecting jurors for the trial at Middlesex Superior Court began in June 2008. Concerns were raised regarding the high-profile nature of the case and whether Neil would be able to receive a fair trial. The trial for the double murder officially commenced on June 2, 2008, in Woburn, Massachusetts, with Elliot Weinstein leading Neil's legal team. During the trial, Weinstein unsuccessfully attempted to challenge the prosecution's proposal to introduce DNA evidence. Similarly, efforts to suppress other evidence discovered in the family home due to the absence of a warrant were also futile. Neil chose not to present any witnesses or testify in his defense throughout the trial. Observers noted his lack of visible emotion during the proceedings. On June 25, 2008, Neil Entwistle was convicted of 2 counts of first-degree murder, as well as unlawful possession of a firearm and ammunition. The court sentenced him to life imprisonment without the possibility of parole. Upon leaving the courtroom, Neil was overheard reassuring his loved ones in the gallery, saying, "I'll be all right." Initially, Neil was held at Sousa Baranowski Correctional Center. In August 2008, he fell victim to a deceptive ploy where he shaved his head in an attempt to seek protection from a white supremacist prison gang. However, instead of receiving protection, the gang threatened his life, stating, "It's a nice gesture on your part, but we're going to kill you." Following this incident, Neil was placed in protective custody, and subsequently in December, he was transferred to Old Colony Correctional Center, a medium-security prison located in Bridgewater, Massachusetts. The Department of Correction confirmed that the transfer was made for Neil's safety due to credible threats against his life. The tragic deaths of Rachel and her infant daughter left a profound emptiness in the hearts of those who knew and loved them. Their passing serves as a stark reminder of the vibrant lives that were abruptly cut short in the aftermath of this heartbreaking loss. The community came together, providing unwavering support and comfort to the grieving families. Their unity and strength during such adversity demonstrate the remarkable resilience and compassion that resides within humanity. The narrative of Neil Entwistle and Rachel Souza stands as a poignant reflection of the unseen challenges that can lurk beneath the surface of seemingly perfect existences. May the legacy of Rachel and her daughter prompt us to remain vigilant, extend a helping hand to those in distress, and cherish every moment spent with our dear ones. Their story serves as a somber yet powerful call to prioritize empathy, support, and appreciation in our interactions with others. Hello friends. Welcome to our channel. Today we're going to take a look at another horrible case with you, the case of Savannah Gold. In 2017, Sherry's world was turned upside down in Florida when her daughter Savannah failed to show up for work at the restaurant where she was employed. Sherry was unaware that this ordinary day would be the last time she'd see Savannah. An hour later, the restaurant called Sherry to inform her that Savannah hadn't arrived for her shift, which was unusual since she had never missed work before. However, the events that unfolded after that call were even more bizarre. When Savannah's father received a message on her behalf, riddled with spelling mistakes and lacking punctuation, he instantly knew it wasn't his 21-year-old daughter who had written it. The impersonator claimed Savannah had met an amazing guy, fallen in love, and decided to elope with him, promising to call later. Savannah's father, Daniel Gold, carefully read the text message, paying close attention to its content. He knew his daughter well and was convinced that running away with her boyfriend was out of character for her. While Daniel studied his phone screen, trying to make sense of the message, Savannah's older brother Chris received a similar text saying she was leaving with her boyfriend and that she was okay. Daniel's instincts told him something was wrong, so he immediately started calling his daughter's phone, only to find it turned off. Savannah Page Gold was born on April 26, 1996, to Daniel and Sherry Gold. She lived with her parents and older brother Chris in Jacksonville, Florida. Savannah enjoyed various hobbies, including playing lacrosse, drawing, and dancing. Those close to her believed she embodied her last name, being a loving, kind, and caring person always willing to help others. After graduating from high school, Savannah turned down a college scholarship for art and design to care for her mother, Sherry, who had been diagnosed with cancer and was undergoing chemotherapy. To support her mother, Savannah took on household responsibilities and also worked as a waiter at Bonefish Grill, a restaurant. By the summer of 2017, she had been working at the restaurant for 2 years. On August 2nd, Savannah left for work at around 5 p.m., wearing her uniform, as her shift was scheduled to start at 5:30 p.m. However, less than an hour later, Sherry received a call from the restaurant asking why Savannah had not shown up for work. This surprised Sherry, as she knew her daughter was responsible and had seen her leave the house in her uniform, indicating that she had indeed gone to work. After Savannah's father received a suspicious phone call, her father and brother started getting strange messages that they didn't think were from her. They suspected someone was impersonating Savannah. Before this, Savannah's father had tried to contact the police, but he couldn't reach his daughter. She was reported missing, and the police launched a search for her. Since sending those messages, Savannah's phone and social media accounts have been inactive. The police first went to the establishment where she worked to investigate. They found her unlocked car in the parking lot, about 120 yards from the restaurant entrance. Her personal documents, wallet, cards, cash, and other valuable items were still inside the car. It was clear to the police that the story about Savannah running away with her lover was a lie. If Savannah had planned to disappear, she would have taken her documents and bank cards with her to avoid being traced. It didn't make sense that she would leave them behind in her car. Initially, there were no signs of a struggle or crime near or inside the car, except for the flat left front tire. Forensic experts were called to investigate, and detectives visited the restaurant to speak with Savannah's co-workers. However, they all claimed that Savannah hadn't come to work that day and that no one had seen her. The presence of Savannah's car, parked 120 yards from the restaurant, led detectives to suspect that something might have happened to her after she arrived at work. They began canvassing local establishments, particularly those with surveillance cameras, to review the footage and identify the moment Savannah parked her car. Although the image quality was poor, the police were able to see from the footage that Savannah parked her car, got out, and walked to a nearby silver Chevrolet Malibu sedan. For 14 minutes, she stood next to the driver's door, talking to the person behind the wheel. She then opened the back door and got in, and the driver followed suit. The police watched as the car shook, and the back door swung open 3 times before being closed again. Officers suspected that a fight had broken out inside the car between Savannah and the Chevrolet's owner. Shortly after, the man exited the car, approached Savannah's vehicle, opened the driver's door, and removed something from inside. He then punctured the front left tire, got back into his vehicle, and drove away without Savannah ever getting out. The owner of the Chevrolet Malibu was quickly identified as Lee Rodate, a 28-year-old manager and chef at the restaurant where Savannah worked. He had helped distribute flyers with Savannah's picture during the police investigation and claimed not to have seen her for about 3 weeks, citing their different work shifts. However, when detectives re-interviewed restaurant employees, they discovered that Lee and Savannah's relationship went beyond a professional one. Several people came forward to reveal that the two had met secretly after hours and were romantically involved, a fact that Lee had failed to disclose to the police. On August 5th, during his work shift, Rodate was arrested and taken to the police station for questioning. When he arrived, he immediately warned the detectives that he struggled with reading and writing. In response, they thoroughly explained his rights, including his right to an attorney, and the fact that anything he said could be used against him in court. Rodate then admitted that he had previously lied to the police when they interviewed the restaurant staff, saying he hadn't seen Savannah in a long time. In reality, he had seen her on the day she went missing, but he was afraid that if he told the truth, he would become a suspect in her disappearance, which is why he had lied. Lee said he had met Savannah about 2 years ago when she started working at the restaurant. However, their socializing outside of work began around 8 months ago. At that time, he was already in a relationship with someone named Chelsea. When Chelsea discovered he had been unfaithful to her, she ended their relationship. Rodate claims he dated Savannah for 3 months before she started using illegal drugs, which led him to end their relationship and reunite with Chelsea. Following the breakup, Rodate and Savannah allegedly agreed to maintain a professional relationship, limited to their work at the restaurant, as per company policy, prohibiting romantic relationships among employees. Rodate also states that Savannah had disclosed their intimate relationship to other waiters, with the intention of getting him fired. Lee last saw Savannah on a Wednesday afternoon. He drove to the mall on August 2nd to talk to her and persuade her not to spread rumors about their relationship, as he feared losing his job at the restaurant where he had worked for 5 years. When he met her, Savannah had just taken a strong substance and was panicking, so she asked if she could sit in his car for a bit. Once inside, Lee demanded that she stop telling people they were still dating. Savannah asked him to join her in the back seat so they could talk. After moving to the back seat, Lee again asked Savannah to stop spreading rumors, but she refused, saying she would do as she pleased. This response infuriated Lee, who then got out, slashed a tire on Savannah's car, and returned. When Savannah asked why he had done it, Lee admitted he was upset and angry. Next, as Rodate claimed, Savannah exited his vehicle and headed towards the mall entrance, but didn't reach it. Instead, she got into an old green Ford pickup truck with tinted windows. At this point, she was holding her phone. However, detectives were aware that Savannah never left Rodate's car and that he was lying. Unbeknownst to Rodate, the police had surveillance footage that disproved his claim, showing no Ford pickup truck and Savannah remaining in his car. When asked about subsequent events, Lee stated that he drove home, even detailing the streets he took. Notably, the man had scratches on his arms and neck, which he attributed to a workplace injury when questioned about their origin. When detectives directly asked Rodate about Savannah's whereabouts, he claimed to have no knowledge. The detectives adjusted their questioning strategy. At first, they listened attentively to his stories, showing interest, but soon they applied gentle pressure. They informed him straightforwardly that evidence contradicted his claim that Savannah had exited his car. After a brief time, Rodate altered his statement, asserting that he and Savannah had gone to his residence, and then she departed. The detectives remained skeptical and urged him to reveal the entire truth, considering Savannah's family's well-being. Rodate ultimately admitted to fatally snapping Savannah's neck during a backseat argument in his vehicle. Following their departure from the parking lot, he sent messages to Savannah's father and brother from her phone before discarding it out the window. Rodate returned the body to his property, intending to dispose of it by fire, but he soon discovered it wasn't as simple as he thought. Instead, he dug a hole and buried the body, only to later exhume it, wrap it in a blanket, and drive approximately 8 miles from the restaurant to a nearby pond, where he discarded the body. Although the autopsy couldn't determine the exact cause of Savannah's death, the examination revealed that her neck wasn't broken, as Rodate had claimed, and no illegal substances were found in her body. However, forensic experts discovered that the thyroid cartilage in Savannah's throat was fractured, suggesting strangulation, and roughly 75% of her body exhibited fire damage. Despite confessing to the crimes, Rodate maintained his not guilty plea on charges of second-degree murder, tampering with evidence, and abuse of a dead body. The autopsy revealed that the condition of Savannah's body was too compromised to determine an exact cause of death. Contrary to Rodate's claims, her neck was not broken, and no illegal substances were found in her system. However, the autopsy did indicate that Savannah was strangled, as her thyroid cartilage was broken and approximately 75% of her body had been burned. Rodate's confession was revoked at trial, where he claimed he acted in self-defense, alleging that Savannah had initiated the strangulation. This reversal put Savannah's family through additional trauma, forcing them to attend numerous court hearings. Cher Gold, Savannah's mother, has battled recurring cancer during this ordeal, but she remains committed to attending every hearing alongside her family. They have been present at 26 out of 27 hearings, enduring the emotional toll of facing Rodate, the man responsible for their daughter's death. The family's primary concern now is to bring this painful process to a close and secure justice for Savannah. Lee Rodate was not the only family member to be charged with murder. In 2016, a year before Lee committed his crime, his sister Amber Camarillo, then 26 and still known by her maiden name Rodate, shot and killed a woman during a dispute over a car. She received a 20-year prison sentence. Lee Rodate was offered a plea deal, which required him to plead guilty to second-degree murder in exchange for a 40-year prison sentence. In return, the charges of tampering with physical evidence and abuse of the body would be dropped. After consulting with his attorneys, Rodate accepted the deal and was sentenced to 40 years in prison on March 11, 2021. Following the verdict, Savannah's family expressed gratitude to everyone for their support. Daniel Gold stated that they loved Savannah and were overwhelmed to discover how many others also cared for her. Hello friends, welcome to our channel. Today we're going to take a look at another horrible case with you. The case of Diane Holick. Diane Holick, a 43-year-old senior executive at IBM, was known for her reliability. So when she missed a scheduled work call on the morning of November 16, 2001, her colleagues were immediately concerned. Unable to reach her, they alerted the police, asking them to check on her at home. The officers' discovery at her house was gruesome. Born in 1958 in New York City, Diane was a driven person who had built a successful career at IBM, one of the world's largest hardware and software companies. Over 20 years, her hard work had earned her a senior position, allowing her to work from her home office in Austin, Texas, where she had moved in 1996. Diane lived a luxurious life in the suburbs, hosting wine-tasting parties, frequenting expensive restaurants and dance clubs, and engaging in charity work. She was also trying to improve her personal life. In mid-November 2001, a severe storm warning was in effect in Texas, bringing torrential rains and tornadoes to Austin. On the morning of November 16th, Diane worked from home, but her company had scheduled a work call. Despite having multiple phones, including her home phone, she stopped answering all of them. Her colleagues left messages asking her to call back, and they soon became concerned when she didn't respond. They contacted the police department and requested that someone be sent to Diane's house to check on her welfare. When the officers arrived, Diane's neighbor, who had a spare key, noticed their presence. The police entered the house, where they were met with complete silence, broken only by the sound of dogs emerging from the kitchen. As they received no response from Diane, they began to search the house. In the second-floor bedroom, they made the grim discovery of Diane Holick's lifeless body. Diane's home was one of the cleanest crime scenes detectives had ever encountered. Her body, fully dressed, lay in the bedroom next to her bed. Strangulation marks on her neck, resembling those left by a rope, and signs of wrist binding with cable ties, indicated a crime had taken place. The lack of theft, struggle, or forced entry led detectives to suspect that Diane's killer was someone she knew and trusted. There was no evidence of forced intimacy before her death, but dark spots and red stains on the carpet near the bedroom entrance suggested a possible struggle. One anomaly in the otherwise tidy home caught the detectives' attention. A towel lying on the back of the living room sofa seemed out of place. They sent it to the laboratory for analysis, hoping it might provide a crucial clue. The police spoke to the people who knew Diane and found that she didn't have any known enemies, although it's possible that some might have been unknown. During their investigation, they discovered that Diane was in a romantic relationship with Dennis Conley, the man she wanted to spend the rest of her life with. This wasn't her first marriage. Her previous one had ended quickly. Diane and Dennis met through a dating service, and he had 2 children from a previous marriage. Dennis was a businessman living in Houston, around 150 miles from Austin, where Diane resided. Despite the distance and infrequent meetings, they grew close quickly, and after 2 months of communicating, Dennis proposed to Diane, giving her a $17,500 platinum ring. She accepted his proposal. According to Diane's close friends, her relationship with Dennis had begun to deteriorate recently. As an independent woman focused on building her career, Diane felt uneasy with Dennis's occasional attempts to control her. Another issue was the decision to move to Houston. The couple had decided to start their life together in his hometown, so Diane put her suburban Austin home up for sale. However, realtors struggled to find a buyer willing to pay the $435,000 asking price for the property. Detectives investigated whether Dennis was involved in Diane's death, asking him to come to the police station for a voluntary conversation without an attorney. Dennis agreed and spoke candidly with the detectives. The medical examiner's report indicated that Diane died between 3 p.m. on November 15th and 3 a.m. on November 16th. A strange detail caught their attention. Diane's wedding ring, given to her by Dennis, was missing from her finger, while her other jewelry in the bedroom remained untouched. This led to the theory that the killer had a personal motive or deliberately removed the ring to mislead the investigation. Dennis presented himself as a grieving person. The detectives asked him about his relationship with Diane and his whereabouts on the day of her death and the day her body was found. According to Dennis, he was in Houston at the time, claiming he last spoke with Diane on the morning of November 15th. He spent the entire day at work, without contacting her again the following morning. When he couldn't reach her, he left a voicemail, unaware of her death. Dennis acknowledged that their relationship was troubled, revealing recent arguments before concluding the conversation. The police collected his fingerprints and a DNA sample, but it was possible he could have traveled to Austin, interacted with Diane, and returned to Houston by the next morning. However, after verifying his alibi, the detectives determined he had not left the city, so they had to pursue another suspect. Before leaving the police station, Dennis provided a crucial lead that changed the direction of the investigation, pointing out that Rye, one of Diane's co-workers, had shown an unusual interest in her. The detectives looked into this and found that Rye frequently visited Diane's home and sometimes walked her dogs, but he had a solid alibi, ruling him out as a suspect. When speaking with Diane's colleagues, the authorities discovered that a mysterious individual had inspected her house a few days before her death. He claimed he would make a cash offer if he liked the property, and planned to return with his wife in a few days to make a joint decision on the purchase. As this was one of the few leads the police had, they concentrated all their efforts on finding this unknown buyer, hoping someone might have seen him when he visited Diane's house. The detectives decided to investigate the owners of properties for sale in the area where Diane lived, suspecting that the mysterious buyer might have viewed more than just the victim's house. They conducted interviews with the owners and discovered that 7 women had experienced a similar incident. A 35 to 45-year-old man with a prominent nose and dark hair, styled back, had visited their homes on the day of Diane's death, without a real estate agent present. While 6 women had refused him entry, 1 woman had allowed him inside. According to her, the man's behavior became strange after entering the house. He didn't show any interest in the rooms or doors, and only asked her to show him the second-floor bedroom. She sensed something was off and asked him to leave. Notably, he had introduced himself as Walter Miller when requesting permission to view the property. The police searched their databases for the name Walter Miller in Austin, but found 2 individuals with that name, neither of whom matched the age or physical description of the suspect. As detectives probed the motive behind the crime, they wondered why the thief had only taken the wedding ring, and whether they might have stolen other jewelry or cash, given the victim's wealth and history of living alone, which made it impossible to determine the extent of her jewelry collection. They also questioned the significance of the perpetrator removing the cable ties that bound Diane's hands and taking them with him. Did he know her personally? The autopsy revealed no signs of sexual assault prior to Diane's death, and her body was found fully clothed. Despite this, the detectives returned to her home to search for any traces of semen, assuming the perpetrator might have left behind some evidence. However, their search yielded nothing. A composite sketch of a potential suspect was broadcast on evening news programs, urging anyone with information about a similar individual to come forward. One of the few leads available to investigators was a few strands of hair found on a towel at Diane's residence. Although the hair lacked roots, preventing a complete DNA analysis, detectives remained hopeful that a partial DNA profile could still yield results. A woman contacted the police after seeing the composite sketch, which she believed resembled a suspect in the Diane Hollick case. During her interview with detectives, she recounted how she and her husband had listed their house for sale 6 months prior. A man had arrived, claiming he wanted to purchase the property with cash, but needed to view it first. Since no real estate agent was present, she refused to let the stranger inside. 2 months later, the same man reappeared on her doorstep, introducing himself as Jim Taylor. with her husband away at work and only her young daughter present. The man again asked to enter the house. When she denied his request, he became agitated, shouting and insisting that he be allowed inside. The woman threatened to call the police, prompting the would-be buyer to leave. Still shaken, she wrote down the man's name and the license plate number of his minivan, which had been parked in her driveway. When she saw the suspect's portrait on the news, she immediately recognized him as the same person who had come to her house a while back. This new information led the police to obtain the license plate number, which they then used to identify the vehicle's owner through their database. However, the owner's name was not Jim Taylor, as they had initially suspected, but rather Patrick Anthony Russo. At first, it seemed unlikely that Russo was involved in Diane's death. He appeared to be a family man, living 40 minutes from Austin with his wife and 2 children, and even played in a local church music band. But as the police dug deeper into his past, they discovered a more sinister history. Russo was an ex-convict who had served time for a series of attacks on women. One of these attacks had even escalated to abduction, where he had tied his victim up with cable ties and attempted to strangle her, stopping only at the last moment. For this crime, he had been sentenced to 20 years in prison. While serving his sentence, Anthony Russo met his future wife Janet, a volunteer at the prison's church program. Despite his lengthy criminal record, Russo was granted parole after serving 8 years of his 20-year sentence. The police was skeptical about the coincidence, so they obtained a search warrant for Anthony Russo's residence. When the police arrived, Anthony answered the door, but they found no incriminating evidence inside his house, including Diane's ring or any other personal belongings. A subsequent search of his minivan also yielded nothing. However, the neighbors reported seeing a similar vehicle parked outside Diane's house on the day of her murder. Significantly, the police discovered several cable ties in the utility room that matched the ones that left marks on Diane's wrists. Although we might consider the tie as evidence, it's still indirect because anyone can purchase it at a hardware store. The investigator informed Anthony that his name had come up during an investigation and asked him to come to the station for a more in-depth conversation. At the station, the investigators asked Russo about his whereabouts on November 15th and 16th. Russo explained that on Thursday, the 15th, he traveled to Austin to visit a religious radio station but was unable to enter because no one answered the door. Coincidentally, this radio station is located near Diane Hall's house. According to Russo, he headed home around 4 p.m. but got slightly lost due to a hurricane, which delayed his arrival until around 6 p.m. When the police questioned Russo about his intentions to purchase a house, he claimed he had never browsed any properties for sale. This response proved to be pivotal, as it would later have significant repercussions. Upon being shown a photograph of Diane, Russo remained expressionless and denied ever having met her. Although the police were unable to find any evidence linking Russo to the crime, they were forced to release him. However, the following day, detectives visited the radio station Russo had mentioned and uncovered evidence that his previous statement about the closed doors was a fabrication. The employees at the station revealed that they had not closed the doors, as a large crowd had gathered in the lobby due to an approaching tornado. Meanwhile, a second woman approached the police after encountering a man who resembled the suspect's sketch while trying to sell her house. When the stranger came to her door with a pamphlet featuring local house listings, including her own, she let him in to view the property under the pretense that he would make a cash offer. However, when she showed him a bedroom, he attempted to attack her, but retreated hastily upon hearing her child cry in the adjacent room. The quick-thinking woman retained the pamphlet, which held a crucial fingerprint that the police later matched to Anthony Russo. Russo's claim of never having looked at houses for sale was thus discredited, and his false statement constituted a misdemeanor, a probation violation. Russo's arrest was prompted by his failure to meet parole conditions. Fearing he might flee while they gathered evidence linking him to Diane's death, authorities deemed it necessary to detain him. The police tracked down 15 women who had shown Russo around their homes. All of these women were later brought in to identify the suspect. In a lineup, the women saw 5 men, including Anthony Russo, all dressed similarly and with similar appearances. Each of these men repeated the phrase, "You have a beautiful house," in turn. 10 of the 15 women identified Anthony Russo as the man who had viewed their homes prior to purchasing. The other 5 women were unable to make a positive identification. When the police questioned Russo again, he knew he had been caught lying. Despite this, he continued to proclaim his innocence. At one point, he requested to see his wife and then refused to answer any more questions. The detectives soon received a report from the laboratory, which confirmed that the mitochondrial sequence of the hair found on the towel at Diane's house matched Anthony Russo's DNA. While this was a significant finding, it was not conclusive, as there was a small chance, 1 in 12,900,000, according to court documents, that the hair could have belonged to someone else. Although the investigation had accumulated a significant amount of circumstantial evidence, there was no single piece of direct evidence linking Russo to Diane Hollick's death. One additional piece of circumstantial evidence, however, was the report on the location of his cell phone, which placed Russo in the same area where Diane lived on the day she died. After examining the computer seized from his house, experts found a disturbing search history. Russo, a 37-year-old father of 2 and regular churchgoer, frequently visited an adult website. On this site, he watched videos and read articles about strangulation during intimate interactions. Notably, access to these materials required payment. Even more alarming was the discovery that just days before Diane's death, Russo read a story about a man who posed as a buyer to enter a lonely woman's home, strangled her, and then stole valuables, making it seem like a robbery to conceal his true motive of satisfying a desire for strangulation. The detectives conducted a thorough investigation into Russo and his wife's financial situation. Despite having only $2,000 in savings, Russo claimed to be in the market for a new home, which raised suspicions. Furthermore, the couple had yet to pay off the mortgage on their current residence, although there was no concrete evidence to prove this. On February 5, 2004, more than 2 years after Diane Hollick's death, the police arrested Anthony Russo on suspicion of her murder. During his trial, 14 women took the stand, testifying under oath that Russo had approached them about purchasing a house. Several of these women reported that Russo had visited them on the day of Diane's death, although they refused to let him into their homes. One woman, however, initially allowed him in before asking him to leave due to his unusual behavior. Notably, all the women Russo targeted were of a similar age, suggesting that he had been observing them before making his move. Russo appeared to have a specific type of woman in mind. The prosecution presented the evidence again, describing the events of that fateful November day. As previously stated, Diane informed a colleague that a potential buyer had visited to view the house. Prosecutors suggested that Russo learned Diane lived alone when he first saw the house on November 15th. He toured homes for sale, but only one woman, Diane, let him inside. On his return to Diane's house, Russo likely asked to view the property again, but this time with a sinister motive, carefully planning his actions to avoid leaving evidence. On the rainy day, Diane unexpectedly offered him a towel to dry his hands and face, which he carelessly discarded on the back of the sofa. As she showed him the house again, Russo attacked her on the second floor. Prosecutors believed Russo derived pleasure from strangling, ultimately causing Diane's death during their second encounter. Before leaving, Russo stole cable ties and Diane's wedding ring, which the police were unable to find. He locked the door using a spare key kept at the front door. Russo's former and current wives testified in court, and both claimed that Anthony Russo took pleasure in the act of strangulation. It's notable that this was not his first offense, as he had a prior conviction for a similar crime. After deliberating for 11 hours, the jury found Patrick Anthony Russo guilty, and the court sentenced him to life in prison. Despite his history of criminal behavior, Russo never admitted to his guilt. He will become eligible for parole again and can file his first parole petition in 2044, at which point he will be over 80 years old. Hello friends, welcome to our channel. Today we're going to take a look at another horrible case with you. The case of the Ewell family. During the Easter weekend in April 1992, Dana Ewell informed his relatives that he could not reach his parents, Dale and Glee Ewell, and his sister, Tiffany Ewell. Dana was still at the family's California beach house, where he had spent the weekend with his girlfriend and her father, an FBI agent. Upon the housekeeper's arrival for duty following the Easter weekend, the discovery she made in the house sent chills down her spine. The distressed housekeeper rushed to a neighbor's home, prompting an immediate call to the police, who arrived at the scene of the grim discovery of the 3 lifeless bodies. Initially presumed to be a botched burglary, it was soon determined that nothing had been stolen, leading authorities to conclude it was a planned murder. But who could have had a motive to kill this innocent family? Investigations ensued, eliminating several potential suspects until one unlikely person emerged as the prime suspect. This is the horrifying case of the Ewell family. Dale Ewell was born in Ohio during the Great Depression, which instilled in him a strong work ethic and an appreciation for every single dollar he earned. His upbringing in a family that endured economic hardship likely fueled his determination and ambition. After serving in the Air Force, Dale found success as a businessman, eventually becoming the president and owner of Western Piper Sales Incorporated, a company that specialized in selling small aircraft. He expanded his financial ventures by investing in several farms with profits from Western Piper. Dale had married Glee Michelle, a woman who taught in elementary school, worked as a translator for the CIA, and served on a commission at the State Bar of California. Together, they became parents, welcoming Tiffany in 1967 and Dana in 1971. Dale's achievements afforded the Ewell family a comfortable residence in Sunnyside, a beachfront property in Peraro Dunes, as well as luxury automobiles and designer clothes. The primary source of the Ewells' income was the sale of light aircraft and extensive investments in the stock market. Having established his aviation enterprise successfully, Dale ventured into purchasing several farms, ultimately amassing significant wealth. Dale and Glee's combined net worth was estimated at $8 million, portraying them as the embodiment of the American dream, even though they maintained a modest lifestyle. While Tiffany followed in her parents' footsteps, Dana significantly diverged from their path. While attending the University of Santa Clara, Dana Ewell portrayed himself as a prosperous entrepreneur, claiming that he was the source of his family's wealth. His fabricated narrative garnered attention from a local newspaper and was even included in the Ewell family's school yearbook in 1990. As a student at Santa Clara University, Dana was preoccupied with notions of affluence and stylish living, owning a BMW, and having access to funds that allowed him to indulge in luxury items, such as jewelry, at his leisure. In contrast, his older sister Tiffany, who graduated from Fresno University, exhibited a more down-to-earth demeanor. From a young age, Dana displayed a tendency to lie a lot and fabricate many of his stories, despite his exceptional intellect and education. Dana's aspirations transcended mere comfort, wealth, and a promising future. He shared his father's ambition, but lacked the determination to pursue his goals through legitimate means. Even during his time as a student at the University of Santa Clara, Dana felt compelled to concoct grandiose tales of his achievements and importance, which were entirely false. He proved to be a pathological liar, deceiving both faculty and peers into believing he was the head of a multi-million-dollar enterprise. The underlying tension within the father-son dynamic, characterized by declining communication, remained largely hidden from others. Dana's tendency to fabricate extravagant stories about himself likely caused embarrassment for his father and could have led to conflicts between them. Despite Dale's upbringing in humble circumstances and his generous support for his children, it seemed that Dana harbored an unquenchable sense of entitlement. On Sunday, April 19, 1992, in Sunnyside, California, the mild, partly sunny weather created an ideal Easter Sunday afternoon atmosphere. Dale, aged 59, along with his 57-year-old wife Glee and their 24-year-old daughter Tiffany, had spent the Easter weekend at their beach house. Glee and Tiffany returned directly to Sunnyside by car, while Dale opted to fly his private plane to his hangar before driving home. Unbeknownst to them, upon their arrival home after their 2.5-hour journey, they were ambushed almost immediately upon entering. Tiffany was fatally shot in the head first, followed shortly by Glee, who was shot multiple times 30 minutes later as Dale arrived in the driveway. Unaware of the tragedy that had befallen his family, he too was fatally shot as he opened the door from the garage into the house. The perpetrator had stayed in the house and lay in wait for Dale, who had no idea that he had very little time left to live. 2 days later, 21-year-old Dana Ewell, the youngest member of the family, reached out to relatives and friends in Sunnyside, expressing his inability to reach his parents, despite residing with them. Dana had spent the Easter weekend in San Francisco, about 200 miles away, with his girlfriend Monica Zent and her father, John Zent, an FBI agent. On Tuesday, April 21, 1992, the family's longtime housekeeper, Juanita Avenita, arrived for her usual work duties. Upon entering the kitchen, she discovered Tiffany's lifeless body lying face down in a pool of blood, her hands tucked beneath her. Distressed, the housekeeper sought help from a neighbor and called the police. Meanwhile, Donna was still in Monterey, California, at the time of the murders. Upon being contacted by the authorities, her girlfriend's father promptly arranged for Donna to fly to Fresno. Donna appeared visibly distressed throughout the ordeal. Subsequently, the police embarked on an extensive investigation, dedicating numerous days to gathering evidence and interviewing witnesses. The crime scene was meticulously staged to resemble a failed robbery, but seasoned detectives recognized the signs of a premeditated burglary designed to make it appear as though the family stumbled upon the intruder and was subsequently murdered. Upon closer inspection, detectives noted several anomalies: the absence of weapons, bloodstains, footprints, or DNA evidence. Instead, the detectives observed a methodically planned and executed attack. The precision of the assailant's shots was remarkable, with only one miss, and the perpetrator had even retrieved the spent bullet casings. Inside the home, investigators discovered a box of 9mm ammunition purchased by Dale, later determined to have been used in the killings. Although the home gave the appearance of being ransacked, no valuable items were actually taken. There were no signs of forced entry through windows or doors, and the alarm typically activated had been deactivated. The scene seemed deliberately arranged to suggest a burglary in progress. Investigators carefully examined the backgrounds of the victims, searching for any clues that might link to their homicides. Dale's past involvements, including selling airplanes for an individual later convicted of drug smuggling in the 1970s, and a problematic real estate transaction with his brother that threatened to cost investors millions, were thoroughly scrutinized. However, both incidents were eventually dismissed as having no connection to the murders. The police thoroughly investigated all other potential suspects with plausible motives, ultimately zeroing in on Dana. Dana stood to benefit significantly from the tragedy, being the sole survivor of the Ewell family and the primary heir to the estate. Despite Dana's seemingly airtight alibi, being with his girlfriend and her FBI agent father at the time of the murders, the police remained suspicious of him. Dana's behavior did little to allay their concerns, and only reinforced their intuition about his involvement. Although outwardly displaying distress over the murders, including offering rewards for information and a $50,000 reward for the capture of the killer, Dana's grief appeared disingenuous. His emotional response to the brutal slaying of his own family seemed lacking, failing to convey the expected horror and anguish. Instead, his focus appeared to be primarily on matters related to his parents' wills and inheritance, rather than mourning the tragic loss of his loved ones. In a particularly thoughtless move, he invited a friend to tour the house where blood stains and spatters were still visible, displaying a lack of empathy. Allegedly, he even expressed contempt for the police investigation, claiming they were incompetent and would never solve the case. This sparked a prolonged and intense game of cat and mouse between Dana and the authorities, spanning 3 arduous years as they pursued every possible lead, further intensifying the escalating conflict. Dale's brothers contacted the authorities, accusing their nephew of wrongdoing. They alleged that during the reading of the wills, Dana had reacted angrily upon learning that the trust would restrict his access to the $8 million estate until he reached the age of 30. According to their account, Dana had even slammed his fist on the desk and exclaimed, "How could he have done this to me?" referring to his late father. The arrangement stipulated that his parents would cover his expenses until he turned 25, followed by him receiving investment dividends until he reached 30. Half of the estate would be accessible to him at the age of 30, with the remaining half available at 35. Before the funerals for Dale, Glee, and Tiffany, the brothers took steps to hinder Dana's efforts to claim what he believed was rightfully his. However, Dana managed to secure around $300,000 from an insurance policy that either was not subject to the trust provisions or had been overlooked by mistake. Dana's uncles, his father's 3 brothers, were actively preventing him from inheriting any portion of his father's assets and wealth, causing significant frustration for Dana. Despite the mounting pressure from investigators closing in on him and accusations from members of his extended family implicating him in the murders as a ploy to gain control of the family estate, Dana continued to live his life seemingly unaffected. He continued to spend money recklessly, splurging on lavish gifts for his girlfriend, Monica, and even contributing towards her educational expenses. However, the source of his seemingly endless funds remained a puzzle. Suspecting that money played a significant role in the murders, investigators intensified their scrutiny. They uncovered evidence indicating that Dana had been embezzling money from various sources, including his grandmother's $40,000 trust account. By the time detectives intervened, the elderly woman had been left with a mere $2,000 to cover her ongoing care expenses at a nursing facility. The revelation that Dana had exploited his vulnerable grandmother for financial gain only solidified the police's suspicions about his character. Despite this damning discovery, the authorities still needed conclusive evidence linking Dana to the murders before they could make an arrest. One of Dana's college acquaintances, Joel Rovick, was usually captivated by Dana's elaborate tales and his portrayal of a pampered, affluent lifestyle. Joel found Dana intriguing, especially his wealth, success, and apparent ability to effortlessly attract the most attractive women. People around them were puzzled about what they had in common, as they were as different as night and day. While Dana sought higher social status, Joel was more interested in video games, firearms, and explosives. Despite their disparities, Joel's friendship with Dana provided him access to exclusive parties and introductions to desirable women. Shortly after the murders, Joel had dropped out of school, and within weeks of the Ewell family's tragic demise, he visited their home for a tour. Eventually, he became Dana's roommate in the same residence. Joel's association with Dana marked a crucial turning point in the investigation. Both Dana and Joel started making unusual cash purchases, such as helicopter piloting lessons, despite Joel lacking an apparent source of income. Consequently, both individuals came under surveillance, and investigators observed their communication, which was through sophisticated pagers and payphones. Authorities had Dana's pager cloned and wiretapped his landline in May 1993. Joel was overheard by an officer while conversing on a payphone. He was recorded saying, "They don't have evidence. They will try to catch you in a lie." On another occasion, he was heard advising, "Just play the game." Dana continued playing the game, buying his girlfriend a new car and covering her law school tuition after exhausting the insurance payout. As previously mentioned, he built $4,000 from his grandmother's account, leaving her with only $22,000 to cover her nursing home expenses. In 1994, investigators shifted their focus to forensic analysis, which revealed that the murder weapon was a specialized 9mm assault rifle manufactured in Colorado. Records from the company indicated that such a rifle had been purchased by an individual named Nest Jack Pon shortly before April 1992. Interestingly, Jack happened to be a high school friend of Joel. Upon questioning, Jack initially denied buying the gun, but later claimed it was purchased as a birthday gift for himself, unknown to Joel, and alleged that the gun had been stolen. The evidence was mounting against Dana and Joel. At one point, detectives attempted to unsettle Dana during their visit to his university dorm, informing him of their belief that Joel was responsible for murdering his family. Dana remained silent, his face visibly drained of color after the detectives departed. Unaware they were being observed, Dana and his girlfriend Monica, who was present during the visit, hurriedly made a phone call to Radovich. On March 2, 1995, the police took action and arrested Dana and Joel. Joining them were Peter Rovick, Joel's brother, and Jack Pon. Peter had struck a deal with the authorities, offering testimony against his brother and Dana in exchange for immunity. He confessed to the police that he had crafted a homemade silencer and attached it to the murder weapon, disposed of the gun barrel, Joel's tennis shoes worn during the killings, and a collection of gun enthusiast magazines. Peter admitted to carrying out these actions in collaboration with Jack Pon. Upon his arrest, Jack provided a contrasting narrative regarding the firearm. He confessed to purchasing it for Joel, but claimed ignorance about its intended use in the murders. Additionally, he corroborated Peter's account of their joint disposal of evidence. Jack, like Peter, received immunity in exchange for his testimony at trial. As a result of Peter and Jack's statements, the barrel of the murder weapon was located, buried in a dirt field. Dana and Joel, however, were obviously not offered any plea deals. Instead, they were charged with 3 counts of first-degree murder and special circumstances, rendering them eligible for the death penalty. The trial didn't commence until late 1997. Dana and Joel, who had once been close enough to travel to Mexico together, share flying lessons, and even live in the same house where Dale, Glee, and Tiffany were killed, now had separate legal representation and adopted different stances during the trial. Prosecutors contended that Dana's motive stemmed from greed, alleging that he had promised Joel a portion of the inheritance. Dana's attorney argued for his innocence, claiming that Joel and Jack had planned and carried out the murders. Meanwhile, Joel's attorney, acknowledging the weight of the evidence against his client, aimed to save him from the death penalty. During his testimony, Jack Pon revealed that he not only purchased the murder weapon for Joel and aided in its disposal, but that Joel had also provided him the details of the events that transpired on that fateful day in April 1992, which he was ready to share. Dana had approached Joel, pleading for a favor which was hard for him to reject. Acting as the executor of Dana's plan, Joel entered the Ewell residence with specific instructions, having meticulously prepared by shaving his entire body. Joel waited patiently for 12 hours, perched on a plastic sheet, to avoid leaving any trace of DNA behind, even a small eyelash. He was also instructed to ensure no bullet casings were left at the scene. Tiffany was the first victim, passing by Joel without noticing him before he fatally shot her in the back of the head. Glee, however, caught a glimpse of the assailant and was struck by a bullet despite attempting to flee to the office. Bleeding profusely, she was pursued and mercilessly shot multiple times by Joel, who then straddled her in a chilling moment just before firing the fatal shot. Glee locked eyes with Joel, recognizing him as a friend Dana had introduced to the family a month prior. After fatally shooting Glee, Joel proceeded to change the magazines in the gun and don fresh gloves, awaiting Dale's arrival. He subsequently murdered Dale as well. However, during Jack's testimony recounting Dale's murder from Joel's perspective, he had made a crucial error by mentioning, "and I saw the eye," which undermined the credibility of his testimony. The jury viewed his account with skepticism, suspecting greater involvement than he had admitted, but his immunity agreement shielded him from facing charges for the deaths. On May 27, 1998, 8 months after the trial commenced, the jury unanimously found Dana Ewell and Joel Rovick guilty on all charges. However, they were unable to reach a consensus on the sentencing. While 2 votes spared Joel from the death penalty, Dana narrowly escaped the same fate by only 1 vote. They both received 3 consecutive life sentences without the possibility of parole. Dana was imprisoned at Corcoran State Prison, located 50 miles south of Fresno. There, he found himself among other inmates, including notorious figures like Charles Manson. Unfortunately, his grandmother, whom he had previously stolen from, passed away in 1999. In the years following his conviction, Dana claimed to have undergone a spiritual transformation, embracing Christianity. He is registered on an online prison pen pal platform where his profile states that he was a finance graduate from Santa Clara University and had started a career in investment banking when some extraordinarily painful events turned his world upside down. Meanwhile, Joel Rovick was imprisoned at Mule Creek State Prison in Ione, about 2 hours south of San Francisco. This prison has housed other infamous inmates such as Tex Watson and Robert John Bardo. Jack Pond went to law school and eventually became an attorney. Monica Zent ended her relationship with Dana, completed her law school studies, and established a thriving law practice. While Monica was scrutinized during the investigation, no evidence could be found to implicate her involvement, aside from her apparent reluctance to engage in the case that led to her boyfriend's conviction for murder, and the fact that he had utilized some of the ill-gotten funds to contribute towards her law school expenses. Greed, entitlement, and heartlessness were the defining traits of Dana Ewell. His unquenchable thirst for wealth and his readiness to manipulate and betray his closest kin ultimately culminated in the brutal downfall of his own family. It is truly sorrowful and regrettable what transpired to the victims of this tragic story at the hands of their avaricious and manipulative brother and son, along with those who assisted him. As we ponder over this heart-rending tale, our sympathies lie with the victims whose lives were senselessly cut short, and the loved ones they left behind. Hello friends, welcome to our channel. Today we're going to take a look at another horrible case with you. The case of Celia Barquin. On Monday, September 17, 2018, in Ames, Iowa, the weather was warm and clear. Celia Barquin Arozamena, a 22-year-old university student, decided to play golf at Coldwater Golf Links Club before her classes. During her drive to the course, she spoke with her mother, who expressed concern for her safety. Despite her confidence, Celia's day took a devastating turn. Although the golf course was crowded, she became the victim of a horrific crime. Born on July 6, 1996, in Point San Miguel, a small village in northern Spain, Celia had moved to Iowa on a golf scholarship, leaving behind a family that had lived in the village for 8 generations. Celia, a talented athlete, had numerous university options offering her a tuition-free education. However, she chose to attend a university in Ames, Iowa, a quiet and cozy town with a population of 65,000, which reminded her of her hometown in Spain. At the time, she had no idea that this decision would have severe consequences and that Ames would become her final refuge. Celia was very close to her family, who remained in her home country. Her parents, Maria Rosa and Marcos Barkin, had 2 children, Celia and her sibling Andres. Her father worked as a butcher, while her mother initially worked in a clothing store as a salesperson. After the children were born, she became a full-time homemaker, dedicating herself to raising the children and managing the household. The family lived a modest life, but they were a close-knit and supportive one. Their children's well-being and education were their top priority. Andres pursued a career in law, while Celia, who had a natural talent for golf, earned a scholarship to study in the United States. Celia had a clear goal in mind: to buy a house for her family and take care of them. To achieve this, she worked hard and practiced diligently to excel in her sport. Her efforts paid off, earning her numerous titles and awards in various competitions. Notably, she won the European Women's Amateur Championship in Slovenia in June 2018, came in second in the European Women's Team Golf Competition, and was crowned the 2018 Confederation Big 12 Women's Golf Champion in the United States. She was also named the 2018 Iowa State Athlete of the Year. With her impressive achievements, Celia's future looked bright, and many had high expectations for her. Despite moving to the United States, Celia remained close to her family. She made it a point to call her parents every day, sometimes multiple times a day. Whenever she had free time, she would feel homesick and miss her family dearly. During her vacations, Celia would visit her family in Spain. Even on her home country breaks, she continued to work tirelessly to refine her skills. Her mother was a strong supporter of her daughter's passion and often joined her in training sessions. Celia had a comfortable life in Iowa, where she lived with her boyfriend, Carlos Nigri Nablas, in a rented apartment. Their relationship had an interesting backstory. They met in university, where Celia was already in a relationship with someone else. Despite this, Carlos was immediately smitten with her. Her captivating smile, kind nature, and determined personality drew him in, and he came to greatly respect her perseverance. Although she wasn't available at the time, Carlos became her closest friend and confidant, always offering support and encouragement. For over a year, Carlos supported his friend Celia through her tumultuous relationship with her boyfriend. When she finally broke up with him, Carlos confessed his long-held feelings to her. After a walk together, Celia revealed her own feelings by pulling Carlos close and kissing him. Overjoyed by her reciprocation, Carlos ran through the dormitory, screaming with happiness. This marked the beginning of their romance. To celebrate, Carlos set off fireworks and sent Celia a heartfelt video, expressing his admiration for her. As their relationship blossomed, they became inseparable. Eventually, they decided to take the next step and move in together. Carlos and Celia were busy preparing for their future together, having already gotten engaged. In May 2017, Carlos graduated from college and landed a job at an engineering firm in Ames. Meanwhile, Celia was nearing the end of her senior year at Iowa State University, where she was also studying civil engineering. After retiring from athletics, Celia had her sights set on a career in engineering, driven by a desire to make a positive impact and prove that women could thrive in a traditionally male-dominated field. Celia spent the summer of 2018 in Spain with her family before returning to Iowa to graduate. As a member of the Iowa State women's golf team, she was a promising athlete who also competed individually. She was preparing for an upcoming competition, but her plans were about to take a devastating turn. On September 17, 2018, Celia arrived at the golf club after speaking with her mother. The staff, familiar with the talented athlete, informed her that a group of 15 older men from Des Moines would be playing golf at 8:45. The group was assigned to the starting line near the first 4 holes. As they arrived in golf carts and began to play, Celia took notice of them. A group of retirees invited Celia to begin her round, so she proceeded with her cart, opting to play the first hole followed by the fourth to avoid delaying the older men. They found her to be courteous and friendly. Next, Celia headed to the seventh hole, a location not favored by many due to its remote position relative to the other holes and its proximity to Squaw Creek Park, which featured dense foliage. Athletes were often hesitant to play at the seventh hole because it occasionally attracted unauthorized visitors, including homeless individuals who could be aggressive. However, Celia was new to the club and unaware of the situation, so she played the seventh hole to make her way to the ninth. The route involved crossing a bridge on a broad path before navigating a wooded section, a place one coach described as eerily similar to the atmosphere of Sleepy Hollow. At 10:30 a.m., a group of 15 people made their way to the area where Celia's belongings were left. To their surprise, her cart was still there, but Celia was nowhere to be found. The group decided to investigate further as they found it unusual that she didn't reappear after 10 minutes. As they approached her cart, they discovered some of Celia's belongings scattered on the field, including her t-shirt and baseball cap, while her phone remained on the cart. It appeared that some items had fallen out of her pocket, but it was unclear why her t-shirt was on the ground and why she had left her phone behind. After searching the surrounding area, the group couldn't find any sign of Celia. They immediately alerted the club management to report their disturbing findings. A group of people reported that a young, blonde girl had been playing golf at the course earlier, but she was now nowhere to be found, and her belongings were still on the ground. Upon investigation, staff realized that she was Celia, the reigning European golf champion. A search was launched, and less than 30 minutes later, a body was spotted floating in a pond near the ninth hole. This discovery prompted the staff to call the police immediately. Upon recovering the body from the water, police officers identified the victim as Celia Barkin. An autopsy revealed that she had suffered multiple stab wounds to her neck and torso. A search dog was brought in and quickly picked up a scent, leading the police to a tent in a wooded area of Squaw Creek Park. Although the tent was empty, it contained bloodstains, suggesting that the perpetrator may have been hiding there. Police suspected that a homeless person, possibly living in the tent, might have been responsible for the attack. The police were searching for the perpetrator and found a man near the tent. The man claimed to live in the area and just wanted to retrieve his tent. As it turned out, the man was Colin Richards, 22 years old, the same age as Celia. Despite their similar ages, they couldn't be more different. However, it became clear that Colin was responsible for the murder. Physical evidence incriminated him. His face was badly scratched, and his black backpack contained bloody clothes, including a t-shirt and shorts. The clothes indicated that he had recently changed out of his blood-soaked garments and into clean ones. The police dogs also picked up his scent. Additionally, Colin had a severe gash on his left arm that was bleeding. Although he tried to hide the injury and conceal his arm from the officers, his efforts only added to their suspicions. Colin Richards was arrested by police in connection with the crime. According to his account, he was at a friend's house before the police arrived. Two male friends had driven him to the park to collect his tent, and it was there that he encountered the police. Collins denied any involvement in the crime and claimed he had never met the victim, Celia. He explained the scratches on his face by saying he had scratched himself on branches while walking through a wooded area. Colin had a history with the police, having struggled with substance abuse, alcoholism, and mental health issues. He had become homeless after being released from prison 3 months prior to the murder, having served a 7-month sentence for burglary. Colin had a history of run-ins with the law, having been convicted multiple times for similar offenses. His troubled past began in his teenage years, and he grew up in a dysfunctional family. Detectives interviewed 3 acquaintances of Colin's, including a homeless man with whom he shared a tent. 2 other men gave Colin a ride from his home to the park. The homeowner allowed Colin to clean up and change his clothes, as he was disheveled and covered in mud, blood, sand, and water. After washing up and changing, Colin left with his bloody clothes in a backpack, intending to return to the park to retrieve his tent before leaving the area. The men described Colin's behavior that day as unusual, extremely nervous, and hurried. He didn't explain why he was in such a rush, only mentioning that he had cut himself and soiled his clothes. One of the homeless men who lived with Colin in the park revealed that Colin always carried a serrated knife, which he used for personal protection. The day before the murder, Colin had confided in this friend about having a desire to rape and kill someone, but the friend didn't take him seriously. Colin was immediately charged with first-degree murder after her body was discovered. The investigators believed that the crime was premeditated, meaning Colin had planned it ahead of time and was actively looking for a victim on the day of the murder. The judge set Colin's bail at $5 million, but since he couldn't afford it, he remained in custody until his trial. Meanwhile, Celia's family in Spain was growing increasingly worried because they hadn't heard from her. Despite numerous attempts by the police and aims to reach them, it was too late at night in Spain and no one was available to receive the devastating news. Eventually, the coach was forced to make the heartbreaking call to Celia's parents, informing them that their daughter had been brutally murdered. A serrated knife was discovered in a wooded area, bearing the fingerprints and DNA of Colin, as well as the blood of the deceased. Additionally, skin particles from Colin were found under the victim's fingernails, indicating that the scratches on his body were inflicted by the victim during a struggle, not by branches. Initially, Colin denied any involvement in the crime, but later, faced with overwhelming evidence, he confessed to the attack. He claimed that he had been under the influence of substances on the day of the incident and was not thinking clearly. Colin stated that he had been walking in the woods when he came across a young girl, Celia, who was alone in the area. He targeted her, having never seen or known her before, and subjected her to a violent attack. The death penalty was abolished in Iowa in 1965, so the maximum sentence Colin faced was life imprisonment without parole. During the trial, Colin's family shared details about his life. His parents were not married and did not live together when he was born. For the first 10 years of his life, Colin lived with his father, who raised him in a strict and often neglectful manner. His father would frequently leave him alone at night to go to the bar, and it was actually his grandparents who provided Colin with care and support. When Colin was 10, his mother, who had since married another man and had 2 more children, gained custody of him. The family moved to the countryside, seeking a more peaceful environment. However, their household was still marked by strict discipline. Colin's room was extremely tidy, leading his family to jokingly suggest that he would be well suited for a career in the military. Colin started out as a diligent student, but as he entered his teenage years, he began to follow in the footsteps of his father, a heavy drinker. Despite his father's attempts to set him straight, Colin's behavior worsened, leading to his expulsion from the family home at the age of 15. Without a stable support system, Colin fell in with a bad crowd, dropped out of school, and became addicted to substances. At 18, Colin was involved with a girlfriend significantly older than him. However, their relationship turned violent, and he was arrested for domestic abuse in May 2015. He was found guilty and served a 60-day jail sentence. On another occasion, Colin was accused of shoplifting, responded by threatening to return and carry out a violent act. Despite his downward spiral, those around him seemed to ignore his problems. Over the next 2 years following the domestic violence incident, Colin had multiple run-ins with the law, being arrested for various offenses such as theft, harassment, and attempted burglary. In an attempt to address his behavioral issues, he was ordered to take intervention courses, but these efforts were unsuccessful. In November 2017, Colin began serving a 2-year sentence at Mount Pleasant Correctional Facility for burglary in violating his probation. However, due to the facility being over capacity, He was paroled in June 2018 after only serving 7 months of his sentence, despite exhibiting disciplinary problems, including engaging in fights with other inmates. Sadly, Colin went on to commit a heinous crime just 3 months later, killing Celia. After his release from prison, Colin reunited with his mother and stepfather, with whom he resided, and resumed a relationship that had been rekindled through correspondence during his incarceration. Colin's parents gave him a chance to start anew, trusting that he would stay away from illicit substances and old friends with a bad influence. However, he broke this promise just 2 weeks later and was subsequently kicked out of his home. With nowhere to go, Colin traveled to Ames, a city an hour away, where he initially sought refuge in the local homeless shelter. Unfortunately, the shelter was full, and he had to find alternative accommodations. Colin's mother helped him out by purchasing a tent, which became his temporary home. However, his presence in Ames soon caught the attention of the local police department. On June 29th, Colin was arrested for public intoxication. Later, on August 11th, police received a complaint from a Target store about Colin and another homeless man camping in the store's parking lot. After being chased away, they men relocated to Squaw Creek Park, where they could camp without disturbing others. There is a discrepancy between Colin's account and the police's statement regarding his camping in the park. Colin claims that the police allowed him to camp there, but the police representatives deny this and assert that overnight camping in the park is prohibited. They also claim that Colin was not given permission to camp and that he was breaking the law if he did so. On September 8th, Colin's mother and stepfather visited him in Ames to celebrate his 22nd birthday. During their time together, they took him out to dinner and did his laundry. However, his mother became concerned about his behavior, as he was distant and gave brief, muted responses to their questions. After dropping him off at the tent in the park where he was living with another man, Colin's parents returned home. Unbeknownst to them, Colin would soon confess to a friend that he had been thinking about raping and killing a woman. Tragically, the next morning, Celia was found dead, although it was later determined that she had not been raped. The police suggested that Colin likely did not have sufficient time to commit both crimes. Following his arrest and trial, Colin's parents expressed their regret that they could not have done more to stop him. As a result, Colin was sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole on August 23, 2019. He is currently serving his sentence at the Story County Jail in Nevada, Iowa. The town of Ames was deeply saddened by Celia's tragic death, with thousands attending a candlelight vigil to pay tribute to the gifted athlete. Her family was devastated by the news of her murder, feeling a sense of injustice that her life had been taken by someone who had achieved nothing and had no aspirations, whereas Celia had shown great promise and had a bright future ahead of her. Celia's parents have preserved her room as a memorial, with the addition of an engineering degree that was awarded to her posthumously by the state of Iowa. They often visit the local golf club, where Celia learned to play golf, and reminisce about happy times. The circumstances surrounding the safety measures implemented by the golf club for holes 7 and 17 following the incident are unclear. Carlos, Celia's boyfriend, found it unbearable to remain in the city where constant reminders of her presence made his grief unbearable. He relocated to Florida, and his life after that remains a mystery. Celia's brother was deeply affected by her death, losing a significant amount of weight due to stress. However, he found solace in a career driven by his sister's encouragement to help others. He pursued a law degree and subsequently joined the police force.